Bin ich nicht. Also meine Kamera.
Kilian tippt gerade so aggressiv auf seiner Tastatur, da hört sich an, als ob man beim Hausarzt ist. Name, Geburtsdatum.
Okay, jetzt gibt es nur einen schwarzen Bildschirm. Ich habe doch aber OBS. Ich sehe die richtigen Dinge in OBS, die ich sehen möchte. Ich weiß jetzt nicht, was YouTube gerade sagt dazu.
Warte.
Ansonsten streamst du den Stream von Crabog, damit wir dann sehen können, was AMG streamt.
Also ich sehe auf jeden Fall. Warte mal. Live. Ah nee, ja, es ist doch. Ach, finde, es ist doch ein anderer Link jetzt.
Aber wir sind jetzt, glaube ich, hier.
Okay, dann bitte den Link jetzt nicht mehr ändern.
Entschuldigung. Jetzt einfach nur den Kanal teilen können, nicht das Video.
Ja, aber du weißt, wie das ist. Leute kriegen das nicht hin.
Ein guter Start ins Video. Ihr kriegt das alle. Man muss euch das vorkauen.
Ihr seid alle doof.
Apropos vorkauen. Milchschnitte, jetzt 10% Rabatt und auf Video.
Ja, weil das halt richtig üben können und so. Aber das ist ja Quatsch.
Ja, das braucht man nicht. Machen wir nicht.
Wir sind für unsere Professionalität bekannt und so machen wir weiter.
Ich wollte gerade sagen, wenigstens der Fabian war vorbereitet und hatte die Kamera schon vor 6 Wochen installiert.
Also ich habe gerade noch mal, es gibt so eine Online-Seite, ich habe einfach gegoogelt Kamera testen und wenn ich die da teste, dann funktioniert sie halt. Das ist halt, kannst du dir halt nicht ausdenken. Das ist halt so ein typisches IT-Fabian-Problem.
Aber es funktioniert nicht. Warum funktioniert es nicht?
So, okay, ich habe überall nochmal den Link aktualisiert.
Nice. Wir haben richtig Bock. Wupp, wupp. Wir haben bestimmt auch gleich Zuschauer und die haben auch richtig Bock. Wupp, wupp.
Ich hoffe es.
Der Zug hat keine Bremsen. Der Zug hat keine Bremsen.
So. Ich habe mich immerhin jetzt schon, glaube ich, 1-2 Stunden mit OBS beschäftigt. Das muss irgendwie reichen. Den Rest hätte auch mal irgendwer anders machen können.
Das sagst du jedes Mal und wirst immer wieder aufs Neue enttäuscht.
Ja. Ich bin jedes Mal von mir enttäuscht, dass ich vergesse, wie OBS funktioniert.
Guck mal, der Dirk ist schon da. Der Dirk ist schon da.
Echt?
Dirk.
Naja, ist einfach.
Ah, cool.
So, ich teile jetzt den Link auch in 1-2 Gruppen, damit er sich verbreitet. Bitte nicht mehr ändern.
Oh, jetzt ändere ich ihn.
Ja, genau, jetzt. Genau, jetzt.
Vor allen Dingen, in welchen Gruppen lädst du jetzt den Link hoch, Fabian?
Der Familie Bayer Gruppe.
Ich bin weg.
Ja, halt in den 2, 3 Star Wars Gruppen, in denen ich bin.
Ja, ja.
Philipp ist sehr laut, schreibt jemand im Discord.
Discord.
Ich kann Philipp bestimmt leiser stellen. Philipp ist sehr laut, oder Fabian?
Nee, Philipp ist sehr laut.
So. Philipp, beherrsch dich mal. Jeez. Ich stelle ihn ein bisschen leiser. Sekunde.
Mir hat noch niemand gesagt, dass ich laut bin.
Ich mag übrigens diesen Ohrensessel, in dem du sitzt.
Ja, der Imperator. Vielleicht nehme ich mir jetzt gleich noch eine Decke und mache hier einen auf Hooded. Ja, warte, das können wir eigentlich direkt machen. Komm.
Das können wir eigentlich direkt machen.
So, wollen wir schon drüber reden, was in den Anfangszeremonien waren? Wollen wir schon irgendwie hier noch ein bisschen hier schon Stimmung verbreiten?
Mach mal, ich weiß von nix.
Ich war gesagt, die Anfangszeremonie leider nicht geguckt.
Also
darf er lädt die Weise.
Die Simone war wieder wunderschön, wie sie immer ist. Ich bin einfach ihr größter Fan. Sie hat schon wieder ausgerastet, weil Lando wieder ein hübsches Cape hat. Auch
war das wirklich so? Hat Lando ein neues Cape?
Hier der Shatterpoint Lando, genau.
Ach so, interessiert nicht.
Das wirklich gut aussieht.
Ne, Capes sind wichtig. Hier. Und gleich, also der Stream, der gleich kommt, das wird ein 90-Minuten-Stream, haben sie gesagt. Also schon recht ordentlich. Das am Shatterpoint-Tag. Das ist das Produkt oder das, was die zeigen wollen, ist das Ergebnis der letzten 3 Jahre Arbeit bei AMG. Und alle Leute werden nach dem Panel die Gelegenheit haben, alle Updates, whatever, was es gibt, direkt runterzuladen.
Ja, cool.
Updates.
Sehr geil,
Also
direkt
wird es auch
danach.
nicht eingestellt. Cool.
Also wenn das keine Aussichten auf irgendein größeres Regelupdate sind, dann also ja.
Spannend. Philipp, erzähl mal was. Gucken wir mal, ob du jetzt leise genug bist.
Eine Milchschnitte? Ja, ich habe mich hier gut drauf vorbereitet, im Gegensatz zu allen anderen.
Ja,
Ja?
Entschuldigung. Ich hab
Also,
ein Kind.
wie-
Das ist eine Ausrede.
Hey, wie gesagt, ich hatte noch einen Kinderpinguin, aber ich hatte die Wahl, ihn jetzt für den Stream aufzuheben oder ihn meinem Sohn zu geben.
Das wird
Ja, okay, fair.
Ich habe ihn für den Stream natürlich aufbehalten.
Du hast den einfach selber gegessen. Du hast den nicht für deinen Sohn aufbewahrt. Wen lügst du denn hier an?
Ja, sehr gut. 3 Jahre, das klingt verdächtig nach der Pistole. Also, ich kämpfe schon mindestens seit 3 Jahren für den Pistole und Kellis. Da bin ich wohl sehr sicher.
Nee, ich glaube,
Wer
für, die
soll
Pistole
schon
für die Pistole brauchen die nochmal 3 Jahre. Ich denke, die Homepage, die neue Edition von der Homepage, die wird da fertig.
Oh ja, die Homepage.
Das ist.
Ja.
Es gibt eine neue Iteration der Homepage. Ja,
Ja.
richtig. Jetzt
Die
gibt es 360-Grad-Ansichten von allen Modellen.
Gibt's das nicht schon?
Weiß ich nicht.
Ich meine, das.
Manche Produkte sind noch nicht mal auf der Homepage.
Echt?
Ja,
Welche Homepage?
ist korrekt.
Was ist denn dieses Internet?
Was ist denn das? Asmodee Deutschland so eine richtig gute Homepage hat mit allen Produkten und auch Figurenansichten und so?
Ja, das seid ihr, Finn. Ich habe das bis jetzt noch nie gesehen. Vor dir.
Ja, ich war auch total überrascht, als ich da mal gescrollt habe.
Ja, es
Was
ist
ist
halt
denn?
vergraben in irgendwas, ne? Also, findest es halt nicht.
Ja, die haben auch voll die Community-Seite, wo alle deutschen Regeln drauf sind und so. Hallo?
Das stimmt.
Machen voll die Leute bestimmt sich Arbeit, um irgendwelche Regeln zu übersetzen.
Die Leute, ja.
Strahlkraft.
Also, ja. Gebirgstruppen. Lasst mich in Ruhe.
Du meinst die Reichweitentruppler?
Ich finde Gebirgstruppen okay. Ihr könnt mich alle mal.
Das ist halt so.
Die Gebirgsjäger.
Gebirge sind gefährlich und die müssen gejagt werden.
Nee.
Das ist einfach so. Wisst ihr, wie angsterflößend so ein riesiger Berg ist? Also,
Der ist halt schon ganz schön groß.
ja. Wir halten uns nicht aus Jux und Dollerei Gebirgsjäger, ne? Das Schlimme ist.
Warum habe ich jetzt gerade aus Herr der Ringe die Szene, wo Boromir sitzt? Man läuft nicht einfach nach Mordor rein. Und dann kommen die Gebirgstruppen angelaufen und kleiden Mount Doom.
Ja, die Frage ist halt so, also, was machen die Gebirgsjäger die ganze Zeit? Weil anscheinend haben wir doch recht viele Berge in Deutschland. Also,
Also in deinem globalen Süden auf jeden Fall.
ja, also hier in Norddeutschland geht es noch mit Hügeln. Ja. Wollen wir jetzt, ist das schon wieder der Zeitpunkt, um über Nord- und Süddeutschland zu reden? Ich kann bitte gerne.
Versuch mal, Philipp, noch ein bisschen runter zu regeln.
Noch mehr?
Ja.
I have the high ground.
Auf jeden Fall.
Meinen Ton kriegt man nicht runter.
Na doch, ich kann dich jetzt auf. Also,
Mein Freund, pass auf. Sonst komme ich zu dir.
stell dich
Und
auf,
ich finde dich.
stell dich auf stumm.
Das hier kann auch ganz schnell eine John Wick-Folge werden.
Hype, 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 Hype. Hype, 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 Hype. Ist natürlich von der Uhrzeit her in Deutschland nicht super ideal.
Ja.
Das stimmt. Aber es geht. Immerhin ist ja heute Donnerstag.
Ja, morgen ist harter Homeoffice-Tag. Das heißt, ja. Ja. Das heißt, da muss man gar nicht so genau da sein und arbeiten und so, habe ich gehört.
Arbeiten.
Ah, tü, tü, tü.
So, geht das hier bald los, oder was?
Ich kann gleich mal meine Seite hier aktualisieren. Ich kann auch noch mal in OBS ein bisschen was drehen, wenn hier das bei dem Ton immer auch nicht so super ist. Nö. Dass ich hier die allgemein vielleicht noch lauter mache.
Red einfach nicht mehr.
Nee, ich gehe auch darum,
Nein, das ist
vielleicht-
keine Option, Philipp.
vielleicht sind wir alle auch zu leise.
Nur ein Ziff. Die ist in Absolutes.
Genau. Möglich. Ich finde auch schön, dass wir alle Akolyt gut finden. Das kann man immer mal sagen.
Ja. Fabian hat es wahrscheinlich noch nicht geguckt, ne?
Das Staffelfinale war super gut.
Ich habe Game of Thrones durch. Ich fand das nicht so gut, das Staffelfinale von Game of Thrones.
Das wäre jetzt ungefähr so, als ob du zu mir sagst, du hast gerade
Wisst ihr-
Lost geguckt.
Wir haben es uns geguckt, wir haben es ja angeguckt so und alle sahen ja auch im Podcast und alle, mit denen ich darüber geredet habe, boah, die letzte Staffel ist so schlecht und wir sind ja echt mit einer sehr, sehr, sehr niedrigen Erwartungshaltung an die letzte Staffel rangegangen.
Wenn du jetzt
Und sie
sagst,
wurde
hast du die gut
trotzdem
geguckt.
unterboten.
Also gut. Dann hast du alles
Also,
richtig gemacht.
Ich fand aber die Schlacht gegen die Untoten, die war echt durchdacht und also war echt das beste Storytelling. Also es war
Dunkel.
vom Feinsten. Dunkel, weißt du, dann hat man so coole Ritter und denkt sich, cool, Feuerschwerter. Und dann sieht man nichts weiter mehr von diesen Reitern. Und man denkt, alle sind tot, so die ganze Schlacht, alle sterben so. Und dann sagen die am Ende der Schlacht so, wenn sie so die Toten begraben haben, wir haben nur die Hälfte unserer Leute verloren. Man denkt sich so, das sah anders aus. Eigentlich haben nur 5 Leute überlebt. Aber okay. Ich möchte kurz betonen, dass jemand im Discord geschrieben hat, dass mein Ton super ist. Ich bin nämlich am besten vorbereitet auf heute Abend.
Nachdem wir vorher eine halbe Stunde verbracht haben, deinen Ton, dein Video zu fixen.
Wir haben es ja nicht gefixt bekommen. Meine Kamera funktioniert immer noch nicht, deswegen muss ich ja mein Handy nehmen.
Merkst du was?
Ja,
Jan, wenn du bei dir zu Hause den Garten machst in deinem neuen Haus, dann reden wir weiter.
Okay.
Priorität. Gartenarbeit macht nämlich super viel Spaß. Spoiler.
Bevor das jetzt anfängt, esse ich die Milchschnitte.
So, was meinte Philipp?
Müde?
Was hast du gesagt?
Ich esse die Milchschnitte.
Achso.
Können wir auch so Umfragen im Chat machen, Finn? Bei YouTube?
Bestimmt kann man sowas. Fuck, aber jetzt doch nicht mich, bin ich vorbereitet.
Ach Mann, ey. Ich dachte, es wäre jetzt der Zeitpunkt, um so eine Umfrage wegen Milchschnitten und so zu machen, um eine Testumfrage zu machen, damit wir nachher immer, wenn irgendwelche neuen Regeln kommen, eine Umfrage machen können. Hey, wie findet ihr diese Regeländerung? Und dann kann man darauf antworten. Aber gut, dann sind wir halt nicht ganz so cool.
Warte, ich mache gerade eine Umfrage.
Wollt ihr, dass Fabian mitmacht in diesem Video? Nein, 100%.
Okay.
Du bist selbst ein bisschen zu leise, schreibt der Dirk. Aber ansonsten wäre es okay.
Ich habe gerade euch alle hart lauter gestellt. Jetzt muss ich wahrscheinlich nur noch mich einmal hart lauter stellen und dann sind wir auf.
Also ich habe die Umfrage gesehen, Finn.
Nice.
Hervorragend.
Jetzt sagt jemand, dass ich lauter bin als Philipp.
Und das geht
ja, warte, erstmal das.
Ach so, ja.
Ein bisschen Delay, gucken wir mal.
Also es kann nicht sein, dass Fabian lauter ist als ich. Das finde ich undemokratisch und schlecht. So, der war hier Star Wars Legions online.
Jetzt live.
Ich sehe nichts. Wo? Hä?
Du musst schon auf Twitch gehen, mein Lieber.
Auf Twitch? Nicht auf YouTube.
Nee.
Hab ich es vorhin schon gesagt.
Ich finde das immer so süß, dass manche Leute mit dem Hobby gerade erst anfangen.
Was? Mit welchem Hobby? Leben?
Leben.
Seid mal alle ein bisschen netter zum Fahrwerk, wer kann das nicht so.
Es eskaliert schon 2 Minuten, bevor die Aufnahme hier startet.
Ihr erwartet immer noch so viel, obwohl ihr mich schon so gut kennt. Eigentlich ihr seid halt selbst schuld. Ihr müsstet es besser wissen.
Ich finde dich toll.
Also, das sind aber schön bemalte Figuren, ja.
Wer?
Die einem Stream.
Ach so, ja, soweit bin ich noch nicht.
Hast du die Sprachmemo nicht gekriegt?
So, mal gucken. Das wird ja nochmal wild, sage ich schon mal, wie denn jetzt gleich der Ton vom Stream mit reinkommt. Werde ich mal gucken müssen, wie wir das halt machen. Vielleicht, dass ich den ganz ausmache und wir dann nebenbei drüber reden, da schauen wir halt mal. Wie gesagt, wir üben hier alle zusammen.
Wir haben ja auch gerade erst mit dem Hobby angefangen.
Eben. So, ich hoffe, man kann jetzt im Stream halt den Hintergrundstream sehen. War jetzt jedenfalls meine Intention vom Ganzen hier. So, man sieht halt unsere hübschen Gesichter. Wichtig. Und dann dahinter,
ich habe den Stream gefunden.
und dann dahinter halt den Stream. Und dann halt mal gucken. Ja, so ist ungefähr die Intention. Und dann passt das vielleicht. Oh, ich kann natürlich auch unsere Gesichter nochmal.
Ich hoffe ja, dass das Imperium endlich mal gut wird und alle anderen nur genervt werden, so wie sie es verdienen.
Ja.
Ich hoffe, dass Klone wieder Standby-Token scheren können.
Ich weiß nicht, ob das die Spielmechanik ist, die ich am meisten vermisse. Es geht los.
So, es tut mir leid, was geht los?
Bei mir reden die Leute und sitzen am Tisch.
90 minutes. Yeah, that's 7. Great. We can all count. Beautiful. Hope you're all having a great day out there. Thank you so much for joining us for this exciting look at all the new things for Star Wars Legion. We're going to start with a little bit of a discussion about what to expect from the panel. And then we're going to dive in and show you all of the cool things that are coming. Big note is that everything we're going to show is going to go live on the website for print and play, so you can immediately start using it. It'll be legal, all that good stuff, right after this panel.
Ich drucke schon.
You can feel free to grab your screenshots and share them while the panel's going on, but honestly, you don't have to go through that effort because you're just going to get it all in the official documents right after this. So why are we here? We are here because Legion is entering into its 6th year.
Ich finde, das Setup ist professioneller als sonst.
A few months ago.
Vorn sieht gut
so
aus.
We're right past the birthday.
Ja, das stimmt.
And of course, well, the game has been going strong. As games age, as they grow, as they expand, they always wind up needing a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of maintenance, a little bit of gardening and pruning and those kinds of things. So that's what we're here to discuss.
Okay.
Over the last 3 years, we have been heavily working, testing, iterating, and going back and back to the drawing board quite a few times, actually, with our wonderful playtesters and internally to effectively create a new refresh, not a new edition. This is very much the original Legion that we all know and love, but it has been dramatically affected and rebalanced. We're going to be talking about a brand new battle deck and changing the way in which missions work in order to bring more interactivity, more excitement to the gameplay itself. We're going to be talking about a massive rebalance. So a while ago, we announced and showed off the fact that we are going to be redoing all of the soft plastic miniatures into hard plastic. As part of that, of course, it gave us the chance to go in and start to look at all of the original units that were made for the game, as in addition to everything holistically as where we are now, where we're going with new development. And we're doing a massive rebalance for that. So effectively, we're going to go through the first half of this process. And that's going to be the important bit to know is that today
doof, wenn du damit sitzt und nichts sagst. Musst
the
halt
second
immer
part
so
of it, the
interessiert
full
gucken.
completion of this entire refresh, is going to be finished out around this time next year. So we're going to be talking a bit more about part 2 come Adepticon and its roadmap in 2025, showing you more of what to expect. But the whole culmination is effectively going to be that you're going to get a brand new refreshed Legion that has updated rules, an updated look, everything else going on, with everything going forward and set up for the success of the next 5 to 10 years. And we're going to continue to, of course, iterate and build on the foundation. But this is kind of the big moment where doing everything all at once made the most sense. It provided the best balance for the game and allowed us to have a strong foundation from where to go next and ensure that everything was going to be fairly stable and ready for all of the new things that we have coming on as well. With that, the first thing we're going to show off is the brand new Legion logo. So the Legion logo that you know and love has been radically updated. It's still very much Legion, but our graphic designer, Ryan Ritter, Star Wars extraordinaire, has done so many amazing things for all of the different Star Wars lines, including Shatterpoint and Legion, has updated the Legion logo. So this is going to be the new look. You're going to see this in all the packaging and everything else.
Das sieht echt gut aus.
One of the big reasons for this updated refresh in terms of the look and everything else, not just with the game rules, but again, this is a holistic thing, is the idea that we are moving into multilingual. So you've seen this maybe with some of our other products, the fact that we are now putting multiple languages into the single package. This is a really important step for us and for the gaming community, because what it means is it allows us to have a broader reach to provide these games in multiple different language pathways to communities that may not necessarily, or regions that may not necessarily have a big enough customer base or player base at the moment to be able to sustain those products, right? And so by combining them all together, we actually provide savings across the board to everyone. We make it easier for regions to have product in stock, for our distribution partners to be able to share that product, and ensure that people don't run into situations where they may not have a product available in their region for a long, long time. Additionally, by doing all this, it actually does reduce manufacturing costs and everything else. So it is a very substantial benefit overall, even though it may seem like that wouldn't be the case because you're putting more in the box. So multilingual is a very important step for us. It's an important step for the communities in general, and we're excited to be bringing this to Legion. That also means that we have to look at everything from a graphic design and layout standpoint and visual standpoint, to ensure that it is multilingual compatible, and some of the things we're going to show off and change have been affected due to that, in order to make sure that it is all set up for that way. Also to just give it a modern and the best look that we possibly can. It's not just the design and everything else that changed. We, of course, over the 3 years, have refreshed, rebalanced, and looked at all of the rules within the game, all of the units, all of the core mechanics and everything else. Not only have we updated the packaging and the card design and everything else, as you're going to see, we also had our amazing art team led by Preston Stone go through and effectively redo almost every single piece of Legion art and update it to a brand new modern look with brand new stylings. All of the art you're going to see in this presentation effectively is a marker of that. Command card art was updated, character card art was updated, unit card art was updated. Pretty much nothing was left untouched. I think overall we redid about 95% of the art when we took over the stewardship of the game. And so there's amazing new visuals. You're going to see that throughout all of this. So that's where we're at. The one thing I want to make clear is that, again, this is not a second edition. It doesn't invalidate anything that anyone has in the collection. All it does is update, hopefully rebalance, and bring new excitement to what you do have. The game is going to feel very similar. There are going to be, of course, as with most of these updates, a couple of rules changes that we're going to discuss. Additionally, well, we have 90 minutes. We're not going to be able to cover everything in detail. So we're going to give you like the high-level look at everything. We're going to discuss things. We're going to hit the points that we think are most important to cover in person. But along with those documents, right after this panel, there's going to be I would call it a doctoral thesis on Legion, written by my fine fellow developers here as a group, that effectively goes into all of the changes, why we thought the change needed to be made, some of the data behind the changes and the way in which we changed them, and then kind of some examples as well as in terms of what this means for the overall effect and what it brought to Legion. So you can check that out as well. There's that's for all of the math junkies out there. There's going to be some good math breakdowns in there, talking about statistics and data and all that. You use round numbers.
Yeah, we did high level.
I mean, there's no like chart.
We didn't go crazy.
Even though Mr. Ben Ransom did build a wonderful chart, which, let's be honest, shows your prejudice against the Imperial Army, because it was all about what does it take to kill a unit of stormtroopers.
I mean, that's true. Yeah, how dare you, Ben?
Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's dive in, because it is time. One of the big things that players have been asking about, which has tickled us no end and made waiting for this moment very difficult, has been a lot of people have been asking, when is the battle deck going to get refreshed? When are we going to see new missions? When are we going to see some adjustments? Because obviously the original system was showing its age. Those cards and what they were asking you to do have obviously been around for a long time. They've supported the game and grown the game, but it was time for a modern take. It was time for new missions to come in and challenge players in new ways. So we have completely redone the battle deck. We're going to talk about that evolution right now.
Oh, nice battle deck.
And here
Secondary
is the
objectives.
new mission dashboard.
Nice.
We're going to go through each of these items individually,
Pokebälle.
but I'm going to turn it over to my fellow devs to start talking
Gotta
about
catch them all.
what the new mission deck is, what the new
Oh, ja,
battle
5
deck, the
Runden.
new missions,
Ja.
and everything
5
are
Runden,
to
krass.
do, what each of these sections are, and we're going to show you some examples of those cards to
Ist
get
das das für ein
that
Stab
going
unter
as
den
well.
Pokebällen? Ist das dieser,
So we had a
dieses
couple
halbe
of big
Reichweite.
priorities whenever we're
Die
making
halbe
the new mission
Reichweite vom
system,
Asset.
adding progressive scoring into the game, and getting both players' battle decks involved so that you have a more collaborative experience for building the mission. So how it works is
Beide
we
Player haben ihr Deck.
added a priority roll to the game instead of the bid system. So
Kein Bit
you
mehr,
roll to see
kein
who
Oh, kein Bit
becomes
mehr,
the
woo.
blue player for doing the first mission mission setup action, and that player puts their mark on the blue player mark and reveals one of their objectives or secondary objectives randomly, and then the red player would then reveal the other one, and then they each reveal one of their advantages. So whenever they're doing that, after doing that, each of them can, starting in the blue player order, modify the mission once, so they can veto their opponent's objective that they put out and put out one of their own, or even change one of their own. The only thing that is for advantages, you can't put your own advantage into the opponent's deck. So
You got to use your own.
Your advantages are your advantages.
advantages just give you something that is definitely something your own edge in the battle. So it's a guarantee that you have something that you like.
So one of the big goals
Okay,
here
okay,
was
also werden beide Battle Decks
was to
quasi
adjust
benutzt
the
von
mission
beiden
building
Spielern.
process to make it more interactive between
Wie beim
players,
Marvel
but
Crisis
also
Protokoll so ein
maintain the
bisschen.
core
Ich glaube,
identity
da ist das auch
of
ähnlich.
the basically the original system, where you could veto certain cards within the layout. By having both players get to use their cards, Tony, you can probably jump off this slide. I think we've looked at it enough.
It's beautiful.
It is
Well-
beautiful. It is beautiful.
Yeah, there were 12 victory points there, which
There
is
are.
the condition for winning the game. And
Oh,
five-
it's fine. It's
We'll
good
dive
condition.
into that.
there.
You'll remember. They'll know what the 12 is.
Yes.
But the goal was to make sure that veto
Keine
system that
festen
bounced back
Runden
and forth
anscheinend.
was still
Okay.
there, but to provide players more interactivity and more agency in terms of setting up the mission. So by allowing players the choice of replacing their advantage card, replacing the primary objective, or replacing the secondary objectives from their specific decks, it means that there's more cards in play, and there's more likelihood that players are going to have meaningful choices over what to use with their limited amounts of vetoes. I don't know if you want to talk more about that as well.
There's one thing that we haven't mentioned, which is you can also take blue player
Yes.
as one of your vetoes as well.
okay.
So that is a pretty
Ah,
cool
cool, du kannst ja blaue
Das
Yeah,
habe
Seite
ich
we
davon,
tested a lot
Blue-Player
of
zu
iterations
sein.
of this with more or less cards
Seite
are
auswählen.
more or less
we-
vetoes.
Wahrscheinlich,
more or
ja.
less cards.
and basically
How
we were
many
just
cards, all
seeing
that kind of
what
stuff.
made for the best games and playtest. So I mean we got to see that
Ja, kann ja auch sein,
quite
dass
a bit.
Missionen
The
so
two
geschrieben sind, dass
vetoes
blauer Player das
per
machen
side,
muss und
starting
roter
with the
was
blue player,
anderes.
so the
Gibt's
red
auch.
player gets to veto last. Is they both players feel like they have their own strong advantages in the system.
And by using both players' battle decks, it's much harder to end up in a situation where you're just blown out by the scenario.
Yeah. Right,
Because
right.
if you say, hey, I really can't play this, you can veto it. And then hopefully they don't have a second thing in their deck. So like if you veto it, put yours in, they veto yours, put theirs in. Hopefully it's not one that just blows you out again.
Yeah,
If it
it-
is, you should probably change your own list.
It distills the the previous iteration of how the battle deck works
Frage ist
into
halt,
a
was sind
more
das für
interactive
Missionen?
version that is more
Was
fair
muss ich
for both
tun?
players.
Ja,
As
gut,
Ian
wenn-
just
wenn die
mentioned,
halt
and
ganz,
also
ganz
you don't
neu
have
sind,
perfect
ne?
information, right? So previously you
Ja,
Ja, kann ja auch
created
nix sein, ne?
a grid and you would see, okay, if I veto
Ja,
that
aber haben
one,
sie
that's
gerade
the next
gesagt,
card
dass
that I
alle
have.
neu
Now
sind.
you're flipping off the
Alle
deck.
neu.
So while you know what's in your deck, there is some variance there in it.
For sure.
It leads to a more interactive and fair experience.
If you get
for
down to
both
the last card of
players.
your deck, then you know what is there.
Right,
so
exactly,
you can
yeah.
if
You
you
can
have
still do
a
that.
strategy, but it is very hard to kind of manipulate the system.
Yeah.
There were some other interesting things on that slide if we want to touch on for 2
Yeah.
seconds.
We can
Tony,
always
if we
go
pull
back.
that
Tony
up.
can go back.
Can we go back to the slide?
Reverse, Tony.
Back to
On
the
the right-hand
slide.
side of the screen here, you see 3 red tokens. Objectives are now 2-inch tokens, not 1-inch tokens.
Zwei
What
Pokebälle.
Yep.
So those are the
Ja, okay, größere Objectives, ja.
objectives. And there's also a little half-range tool down there, which is very exciting, which gives us half-range measurements, which
we're
is
gonna
going
be
to be used a
talking-
bunch, and a bunch of stuff coming up.
We're going to be
So-
talking a lot about the importance of that half-range tool and being able to measure things that are not just 6 inches. Ben, if you want to talk about why there are 12 victory points on the map.
Yeah, so whenever a player gets to 12 victory points, at the end of the round, if a player has 12 victory points and they have more victory points than their opponent, they win the game. So
and how many rounds are
Einfach
there?
Und die
so.
12,
there are 5
die 12
rounds
sieht komisch
in
aus
a game
auf
of
diesem
Legion now.
Chart.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about
Also
that
von
as well. when we
Style
get to
her.
the scenarios.
We will.
Yeah, there's
So-
a whole lot that went into that,
Maximal
so let's just
500.
keep it moving and
Keep
we'll
moving
talk.
and we'll get there.
So let's go
Yeah.
ahead and start by looking at the. So we're gonna bury the lead a little bit. We're gonna start with the advantage cards and look at what the advantage cards are. Now, keen eyes probably realize that condition cards are nowhere to be found on anywhere on that dashboard. That's because the condition cards have been removed and they've been replaced with these advantage cards instead. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one, which is strafing around.
Kein limited
There are 6
visibility
of
mehr.
these. We're only going to talk about 2.
Pew,
just
pew,
to get
pew,
an
pew,
idea
pew,
of
pew.
what's
Oh,
going on.
geiles,
And I'm
geiles
gonna let the
Design,
dev,
Alter.
Team take
Ich habe
away.
das Gefühl, die
What
ATS
everyone
ist
wants to say
verlieren.
about advantages, where they go, and how these 2 different ones kind of represent different facets of the entirety.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we decided to change to doing advantage cards instead of condition cards is
Okay,
the
jetzt verstehe
condition
ich, warum die
card
ATS verlieren.
could be a benefit for a player, or it could not, or it could really
Ganz
just not
gut
be
gegen
impactful in the
Fahrzeuge.
game. And
Ja.
so we wanted to pivot to advantage cards because this way you always guarantee
Nee,
that
das
something
ist
on that
Asymmetric.
dashboard and that ends up being used for the game will be beneficial to you, right? So each player has an advantage. Obviously, you're going to pick one that
Also
will
ist
help
nicht
out
so
your army in
hopefully.
some
Hopefully.
way, right? Like,
Hopefully.
and they vary, right? Like we're looking at strafing run here, so this is one where you get to put out
Aber es sieht
an
cool
advantage
aus, das ist die
token, and
Hauptsache.
then
You get to do a strafing.
you get to do a strafing run. You get air
Wahrscheinlich
support,
so
and
ein
a lot of
ersten Support,
suppression
der einfach
on enemy
verboten wird.
units. There's other examples like things that put out barricades. We're about to look at another one. Tony could go to the next slide. So there's this one here, Advanced Intel, that gives during the
Oh,
first
prop
activation
droids.
phase, you get an additional pass token to your pass pool.
Ben, what is a
Pass
pass token?
token.
So, pass tokens are how we track the number of passes a player has. So,
The number of passes.
Whoa!
So now it's more than one, is what you're telling me.
the number of passes is just the difference between the number of units each player has.
Das ist mal
minus
eigentlich
1.
cool, wie es
So,
war.
really easy to figure out. If somebody has 9, somebody has 7, then you'll have 1 pass.
Great.
This gives you an additional pass on round 1. So on round 1, very important. Whenever you are deploying on round 1.
And we're
Yeah,
going to
and-
talk about the changes in deployment in a second.
After we're through the missions, we'll talk about
That's
that.
right.
And
Right.
remember this card.
Remember this card that
This
you
is
can
very
get
relevant.
additional passes on the first round of the game. Okay, let's jump to the secondary objectives.
Das ist zu
Secondary
viel, too much
objectives,
information.
another new add to the
Okay,
overall
sekundär.
mission strategy and
Yes.
pool. So one of the things with the iterative scoring that was really important was the fact
Ah,
that
cool, Bounty
just
als
focusing on the
secondary
primary
quasi.
Ich
mission
würde sagen, das
didn't lead to as much
Bounty.
choice and player
Yeah.
options as possible. Pagani really wants to finish this off, so I'm going to let him
Ich
talk.
hab mir immer
Yeah,
so gewünscht, dass Dark
the
Trooper
secondary
Victory
objectives were really
Point
there to add
Ja gut,
another
aber dann
shot of
suche ich
flavor
mir ja
into the
auch
primary
aus, welche
objectives,
Einheiten
as well
von
as
mir
give
das
players something else
kriegen
that they can do.
nicht
So
wie sonst
if
das
you have a
der
unit
Gegner das
that can
bestimmt.
activate but cannot necessarily contribute to an attrition fight or cannot necessarily contribute to the primary objective, maybe they can do the secondary objective.
Viel
So
Spaß,
with those two
mein
things
APS geht
of
zu
a great flavor
zerstören.
injection and then as well as a variety of things for units to do on the battlefield, secondary objectives played out great in playtest.
They also add a really great tension of I can try to continue to press on the primary objective, or I can try to grab the secondary objective first, give myself a score bump, or potentially break a dead heat
Right.
and win the game, right? Now, doing so may come at the expense or be a gambit in
Right.
terms of trying to continue to maintain a consistent pressure on the primary. So it really breaks up what players can do and what their tactical options and strategic options are. And each secondary, as we'll see, and we'll talk about these, can play into different styles of army construction and different factions overall from their identities.
Mark targets here is really
Kinda like your
straightforward.
vanilla one,
No,
bread and butter.
Yeah, it's very
Murder
straightforward.
things.
Yeah, it's just about defeating units. But
Oh, die
you
Mission
get to
ist
choose 2 of
abgewonnen.
your units. You get to choose 2 of your opponent's units, and each player does that. So generally, the ones that you choose for yourself are very hard to remove. So it is very much like a tactical bury your last victory points. Make sure that they can't get to them, and keeping your most important things safe is the sort of ends up playing
Klingt auf
out
jeden Fall
usually
spannend.
that those aren't destroyed till towards the end of the game because you
Ja
can
gut, also
Und dann kriegt man durch die Secondary maximal
play with them
2
differently.
Punkte.
You get like you get 2 good options and 2 bad
Nee,
options.
4.
Right. And then how can you deal with that? And what
Weil
needs
du
to
2
be bringing your
markierst,
army
also
that
jeder
maybe your
Spieler
opponent can prey on, or what
markiert
needs to
immer
bring
4.
your army
2
that
von
your
sich und
opponent
2
can't prey
von
on.
seinem
I
Gegner.
think what you just said,
Ah,
how do you
okay.
deal with that, is kind of an interesting question that, as Schick just said earlier, we want to kind of like increase the tactical and strategic options. One of the big things that we're
Gut, 4 von 12
doing
ist ja
with
auch
these
schon
new
ein
missions
Drittel. Ist ja
is
auch
we
für
want
eine
to increase,
Secondary.
the options that players have for, viable
Fabian
play
kann Mathe.
styles and viable
Ja,
ways
müssen
to
wir
get
erstmal
their
alles
armies, right?
sehen.
So, we'll
Aber
have
ja.
different missions and different secondary missions that cater to certain army types, and we try to do a good job of, spreading that out to give players different options for, how they want to play and how they want to construct their battle deck to support their army and whatnot.
And so let's take a look at the second one. So mark targets obviously rewards you for destroying things. What we're going to look at next, bringing them to heal, plays
wie geil
a
ist das
quite
denn?
different flavor
Das
in
ist ein
terms of
geiles
suppression.
Artwork,
So
Alter.
right away,
Ich
if you're
liebe
playing
es.
Empire, if you're
Ich
playing
liebe
with a
es
lot of
einfach
suppressive in your
nur.
army, this might be the secondary objection that you're going to dig for.
Darth Vader loves this card.
Darth
He
Vader
is
does.
all about it, for sure.
Yeah. So it's just
Der Einzige, der
every
einen Plan hat,
round,
ist der Destiny.
whoever has suppressed more enemy units
Das
at the end of the
Artwork aber im
round,
Hintergrund auch, ne?
before they remove their suppression tokens, gains a victory point. So
And
it
then you have these
also
kind of stretch goals at the bottom, right?
right. So that
Das-
these are things you can score once per game.
Einfach
So
krass.
if you panic an enemy unit, which is it takes quite a bit of focus generally,
gar
or,
nicht
or
alles dazu
suppressive
sagen.
weapons, then you score 2 victory points.
Too happy.
And if you get a suppression token on everything that can have a suppression token, you get 2 victory points.
It's happening.
So like not there. So if they have like null courage or they have tanks, you don't have to get suppression on those because you can't.
Yeah.
But everything else.
In playtest, that one was, I really like this one because it led to really explosive end games where when people don't have a lot of units left, you can really score that like.
So it generally
expression
only
on everybody.
only capable of doing this towards the end of a game,
Yeah.
and
It made
that
it
really
very
makes it very
explosive
very
ends.
exciting. It flips the game
And,
over.
and let's talk a bit about a second. So, in the previous secondary objective, there's a kind of a fixed number of victory points available there. And on this one, there's a variable amount, right? You have these, stretch goals at the bottom that you can, only get once, but then you can get one. It's starting to
Effectively every
right?
round.
And so that kind of goes back to the progressive scoring of, some of the scenarios,
ja quasi
objectives
8
or secondary
Punkte, die ich
objectives
dadurch
have
machen
different
kann.
Ja,
rates
krass,
that you
ja,
can
weil
score,
du
and that goes into like,
ab
okay,
Runde
like, don't worry
drei-
about
Ja,
it.
oben
I'm
kriegst du
gonna
aber auch
try
noch
to,
einen Punkt, also kannst du noch mehr als 8
through to
machen.
get those 12 victory
Nee, du
points
kannst
as
genau
soon as
8
I
machen.
can,
Kannst
and
4
maybe
über
not as
den,
tough,
über den obersten
durability and
Absatz machen und
attrition-wise, or do I
4
want to
über
try to
den
play the long
Ah,
game
okay.
and have more
Ja,
attrition-focused
verstehe.
army?
Weil man erst ab der
Yeah, and
zweiten Runde
so that's a
quasi.
great segue. Let's just dive in and start looking at what the new primary objectives look like. We're going to go through all 6 of these, just so we can discuss each in brief, each of the different play styles,
Alle
each of the
6
different
primary
thought processes
objectives.
behind them, and how they kind of
Guck mal
tie
da, wie
together.
geil ist das denn?
Was?
So the first thing that we're going to talk
Aufstellung
about
und-
is
und
deployment,
Missions in einer.
because you look at the map
Anderthalb.
cards and immediately you'd say, okay, I understand from the old system that red is red player's deployment, blue is blue player's deployment. That's not true anymore. Those are called territories. Ben, tell us what a territory is and why it matters.
So a territory is an area where you can move in off the edge of the board whenever a unit activates. So all the
wenn
units
ich
without
aktiviere,
special
darf ich
rules
reinlaufen.
start off the board, and they move on with their
5
first action. Their
Gangenart
move
im
action.
Rücken. Das sind Gangens.
So
Das sind
use
Gangens,
any of
das
the board
Wichtige.
edges that are
Gangens.
within that territory.
Gangens.
You can
Handelsverträge,
start with the
Handelsverträge.
movement template touching those, and move to the end of it. So.
Connie, you want to talk a little bit about what this dynamic deployment in round 1 kind of brought to the game?
Also habe ich das richtig
some
verstanden?
of the
Deine
thought
erste
process
Aktion
behind
ist, du
it,
läufst jetzt
and how it
rein.
impacts
Ja,
a lot
es
of the
gibt keine
design that
Ausstellung
we're going
mehr.
to see going forward with missions and some
Ach
of the
krass.
Absolutely.
haben ein
So
paar
because you're only
Kleinigkeiten
deploying,
Ja, aber das kann
you
ich
now
mir
have
jetzt
a very
alles
interesting cat and
morgen
mouse
früh
game of
ausdrucken und am
when do you
Wochenende
want to
zocken.
activate
Gleich
your
kannst du dir jetzt
Zwei,
Geist
when you wanna
ausdrucken.
activate your
kannst
not
2
important
Stunden
units.
ausdrucken.
Where do
und
you
zocken.
want to put them, right? Because
gehst
there's
auch
no
nicht schlafen,
restriction
bevor
on
du
where
da nicht
you're
ausdruckst.
Ich muss
putting
morgen
units
arbeiten. Ich
until
hätte
you've committed them to the
frei
battlefield.
nehmen
So if you have an ATS team and they
Krankmeldung.
only have a few anti-tank weapons, you can wait for them to deploy those and deploy the ATS.
Hier im
somewhere else.
Livestream.
It's just sort of a very basic idea of explaining what sort of this cat and mouse thing can go on here. There is also something called prepared positions, which essentially lets you set up your unit inside of your territory anywhere you want.
Yeah.
Very similar to the old deployment rules. You do get a free dodge token. Yay! And then there is infiltrate, which gets wild, but we don't need to go into that at the moment.
Yeah, I think that I personally was really skeptical about this at first, and then we were going through and play tests, and like you said, as this really dynamic kind of cat and mouse interactive deployment between the 2 players, and you're interacting, right off the bat. It's not, where you deploy and all right, who wants to commit first, and we play this game of chicken. We're interacting right as soon as the game starts.
So it brings a different considerations than
Yeah.
deployment did
klingt so
before, where
spannend.
you're looking for the same
Das
thing
klingt total wild.
in static in
Das
the
ist
eine
wirklich
gute
langsame
Zeit.
Einheit.
where you're looking for the right
langsame
matchups and
Einheitenverpackung,
going to the
oder?
right side of the board. But you're also looking for the right timing to make shooting attacks. You're looking for the right timing to you might want to deploy different things last in this system because you might want they might be more important for that first round action.
And there's also a lot of consideration in army building for this kind of thing, right? What do I want to activate first? Can I activate something hyper durable that can go stand out in front of my opponent's army? Can I activate something super fast that can get out there and get behind a building or get behind some cover or something, right? So you have a lot of different options inside of the different armies for what you want to activate, when, and how it all works out in terms of round one.
Right. And you get to play a command card, and you get all the command card effects. So there's still the same considerations of what goes into deciding on a command card, of how many orders you want to issue, what your initiative is.
It was really great to take the time that was normally spent in a, I don't want to say completely inactive or non-interactive way, but when you deployed, right, you were looking for, okay, I know everything's going to be on the table. I can kind of see what my opponent's doing. I'm going to try to make sure that I can't be shot. So where are my places where I can block all line of sight, so that I don't get overwhelmed by range 4 weapons that my opponent brought.
This round one is extremely exciting. You get right
it's
into
an
the
entirely
action.
different system, because now you don't have to necessarily worry about, oh, I only have a limited amount of completely line of sight block sections. So what am I going to sacrifice on the pyre, or how am I going to balance out the deployment that I have? Rather, you're able to bring these things on in a considered way that interacts in the way that the game normally plays. It just makes it feel more integrated into the entire experience. And I love this strategy and tactics. So let's talk a little bit about shifting priorities, and this one being effectively kind of the base experience, or the most normal battlefield situation, with its mostly centerline objectives and everything else.
I think it's worth mentioning that in the new primary objectives, there is no longer a map card that is part of mission building.
Right.
So shifting priorities will always use this map
Wenn
card.
du die Dinge hältst, dann
objective
verschieben sie sich,
Right.
dann verschiebt dein
we
Gegner
did
die am
that to
Ende.
make a
Gab's da nicht mal so eine
experience
Fun-Mission, wo
for,
sich dieses Monster
how
mal
the
hin und her
armies,
geschoben hat?
Ja, ja,
what they need to
Noga,
consider
genau.
and making it
Ich glaube, sowas ähnliches gab es auch bei Special Operations.
So shifting priorities is essentially the objectives are right across the center of the map, right in between the two territories. And whenever you score one of these, your opponent then gets to move it so they can score it a little more easy in the next turn.
Or it makes you harder, right? So you have to keep pushing
Right.
if you're pushing,
Yep.
and it is sort of a comeback mechanic type thing, where if you're not doing well in the scenario, it becomes easier for you to score.
Yeah, so it just changes where you need to go. It's going to change basically every round.
All right, so let's take a look at Recover the Research, which adds a bit more considerations, and of course, talking about shifting priorities. I think that one really favors a balanced list building approach, right?
Yeah.
You need mobility, you need things that can hold positions. You need a good mix of stuff. As we go through these, you're going to find that each one of these scenarios does favor certain list builds.
Ich bekomme
or
mehr
ask different
Victory Points, je
questions
mehr
that
von diesen
then
Laboratorien ich
say, okay, what do I want to take
halte.
instead?
Aber
Recover
nur
the
Conteste
Research
steht
being
da. Eben war Secure.
Yeah, this is you only have to
Ja, okay.
contest.
Contesten dann
objectives
quasi,
to,
Hauptsache ich bin
score
dran
here.
und
So
Secure bin
that
ich.
is you only have to have one unit that is within half.
Ja, genau,
Their unit
genau.
leaders within
Du musst
half
nur-
range of the objective.
Contestest, du musst nur einen
So
dran
that is
machen.
a change, right? It's no longer base to base.
Okay,
It's half
also muss ich
range.
meine drei.
Yeah.
Das ist auch nicht Base to Base. ist
So
in
the
3 Zoll.
shifting priorities,
And that's for all of
securing
them.
was
Half range.
is what you do for most of the objectives, which is you have to have
Das ist
more
auch wie
units that are
Marvel
on the
so ein
objectives
bisschen
than your
Unit
opponent.
leaders, specifically.
Unit leaders.
Yeah, and so as they're saying, this is a scenario that very benefits fast armies. So if you have speeder units, they can get there and take the objectives, which, by the way,
Ich frage jemand, ob er ein neues
they
Maßstäbchen
changed
braucht.
vehicles can now
Ja, nimm einfach eins von den
Yes,
alten, die
every
du eh
unit
nicht
in the
mehr
game
brauchst,
can
und schneidest
contest
durch. Ich
So
glaube, das
this
ist am
scenario is
einfachsten.
very much about like, okay, I can spread out. I have to have mobility to get from point
Ich
to
denke,
point.
da
I
wird es
can
irgendwelche
grab
Sachen
points
zu
that my
kaufen
opponent
geben,
weak-
ganz schnell.
And it
weak on.
rewards
Yeah,
you for spreading
and it
out.
Und
rewards you
sonst
for
gibt es immer
spreading
noch sowas, das nennt sich
I also want to talk a
Maßband.
bit of a second about how
Es gab
the
das Tool
deployment
mal
change,
in einen OP-Kit.
how interesting it is where
Yeah, in
instead
the
of
asset kit.
walking onto the battlefield, instead of deploying range 1 from the edge, getting kind of that pseudo about foot back
It's true, yeah.
does a lot. if you want to expand
Yeah,
on that a little bit.
the armies start much farther apart, right? Because you're
Yes.
essentially starting
Ja, ist die Frage,
range
was kommt
2
noch?
farther
Das war jetzt
apart, which
sind
makes the longer range
bei der Runde
guns
0.
more interesting because it gives
Bin
you a lot of value for those.
Ja, wir haben
and
jetzt
it also
einmal ein
makes faster
neues
units much more
Battle
interesting,
Deck
how they can
komplett.
react on turn 1 and things like that.
Stream geht halt
Especially
schon eine halbe
against prepared
Stunde.
position units and other things.
Ja, aber kommt ja noch eine
Buying
Stunde.
back effectively
Ja,
an
ja,
extra
also-
foot of space of the table
It's
Nichts anderes
has a
annimmt.
phenomenal impact on each of the different roles
Na
for the
gut,
unit.
reicht halt,
It
ne?
really
Wir müssen
opens
ja
up
gar nicht
that
so die
breadth
Einheiten
you
ändern. Wenn
need
sie alle
to
Missionen
make
ändern, das ist
range
alles
3 to
neu
range
halt.
4
Ne?
field that much more impactful, to make speed 3 versus speed 1 that much more impactful.
You see a lot of units making moves.
Yes.
That free-
Early moves.
That free
always.
compulsory
Ich glaube,
move
dass man
is
viel bewegt.
very important.
Ja,
So let's
toll.
jump into
Meine Schneepuppen
intercept
freuen
the
sich.
signals. This one, I believe, is the brawl scenario,
Yeah, very brawly.
as Ben
Oh,
likes
zu
to
viel
call
Text.
So yeah,
Super viel Text.
Alle
so
lieben Text.
during each of the point of interest, you see
Ja,
the
aber besser
towers
als,
that
du
isn't
musst es halt
in
ganz klein
your
hinschreiben,
deployment
ne,
zone
damit die
are the ones
Missionen
you can score. So you
verständlich
have to
sind
get
immer und
across
keine
the
Ja, klar, das ist schon
table
richtig.
at the very least
Pastes
to score.
vergisst.
Der Fabian
And
schon wieder. Man muss
you
mir
get
so
two
gut
units
schreiben.
that get tokens on them that
Ja,
make it so
ich
they
weiß,
only
du
have
musst
to
mir
contest the
alle
score.
nochmal erklären.
So
wenn's-
those units
Ja,
are rewarded
wahrscheinlich.
for mixing
Werde ich
into the
alle 5
opponent's
Minuten kriegst du eine
side. If they
WhatsApp-Nachricht
skew
von
to
mir.
one
Wie
side, you can
funktioniert
still
das
score
eigentlich?
the objective that's on that side
Ich freue mich,
with
dass
those units. And you get
zu
you
besprechen
keep
mit euch
getting
allen.
those tokens back.
Podcast
You keep getting
wird
them on
gut.
units as your units get defeated. So
Und wir nehmen ihn
this
gleich
this,
im
this
Anschluss auf.
Klar.
makes it so
Ich habe heute nicht
taking
mehr
the
so
center of the table is very good, controlling, destroying units, and also diving in with some units.
Yeah, I think it's what I love about this one specifically is that it's not just take the center of the table; it's hold the center of the table,
Right.
which is very different from a lot of the other scenarios where you
have
can
to
get in, you can get your
Yeah,
points,
it's
and then if
not
you're
verliebt.
defeated, like, okay, I got my points.
the
But this one
points.
is
Krass.
much more because it's a little slower and it's scoring. It's much more about staying there and holding it down and that kind of stuff. So.
Let's move on to Breakthrough, which this one is, if you love speeders and you love going fast, Breakthrough is probably for you.
This is the Paplu scenario.
It is. It is the Paplu's Wild West
He's not in
scenario
it.
in a lot of ways.
But
So
Okay.
very different territory deployments. The objective placements,
Punkte, wenn du
obviously.
die Ziele
This kind of
im
mimics the
Territorium
old
deines
deployments
Gegners
where it
hältst.
was
Und
lengthwise of the table rather
verweigerst
than,
ihm dadurch
than
auch
width of the
ebenfalls
table.
Punkte. Krass.
So talk a
wird
little bit
doppelt belohnt
about
quasi,
all of the
ne?
different considerations that
Das
go into
heißt, du
this
musst
one
ein-
and kind of what it incentivizes in
Du musst deinen halten.
So this makes it
und
so
den
Ja,
Gegner-
du- ja,
you
Die
need
halten
to
nicht,
put
aber
aber
die
die
forces
Forces Gegner muss
in,
nicht
in
halten.
places that are very,
Guck dir mal die
very
Ziele an. Das,
spread out.
das eine ist
You know,
auf
they're-
der
you
ganz
essentially
anderen
split your
Ende,
forces
am
into
einen
two,
Ende der Platte und das andere ist fast
for
am
the
anderen Ende
majority
der
of your
Platte.
forces, because you need
Ja
to
gut, aber
get
es sind ja auch
to
4
the
Stück, oder?
opponent's
Achso, meinst du
objective
damit?
that's on the
Ja,
right,
ja, ich
and you
verstehe
need
das,
to
ja.
get to their
Die sind
opponent's
ja so.
objective on the
Du
left.
musst ja beide
You need to
halten.
protect yours.
Und das andere noch
so
einnehmen.
that big left-right divide
das
makes
wieder
it so where
Wizard
you deploy
Force.
is extremely important.
Yeah, and it kind of has,
Nicht
know,
wieder
it
so ein
asks the
Objective
players
Deck
this
bauen,
question,
was
like, all
alles
right,
kaputt
you
macht.
kind of got this little attack and defend.
Kann man mal aber
strategy.
sagen,
How much
B1-Druiden
of
mal
that are you going to want to
OM-Druiden mit,
dedicate
wenn
to
man die
trying to
Kette
push my
lange bauen
opponent's
kann.
points
Ich brauche
versus,
meine Kette. Ich
defending
kann
my
keinen
points, like,
KI
oh, well, maybe
triggern.
if I have some fast units, not only can they take my opponent's points, but maybe they can auto back and defend mine, if one of my flanks collapses.
Or if you win a flank with a fast unit, it can then
they can-
recommit to the other
exactly.
side, which other units have no
Yeah.
chance of doing.
And long-range shooting units, if they deploy in the middle of the objectives, they can affect either side, which gives them a kind of unique advantage that most units are not going to be able to do. They're not going to be able to very easily get from supporting one flank to the other flank.
One of the cool things I like about
Das
this
ist auch schon teilweise ganz schön nah
territory map
aneinander,
on
ne?
this scenario is that it
Ja,
allows
das-
us to be found
also,
it's really common for you to deploy your units
mit Burst of
close
Speed
to
stehst du
one
da
of the
direkt auf der
objectives
anderen
and towards
Seite.
the other one, 'cause that's the shortest route.
Hallo.
But it's really interesting the units that have
Ja gut, aber der
infiltrator
Tisch ist
prepared
ja
positions, right? They
derselbe.
can appear anywhere in
6
your
ist ja immer noch
territory.
6 mal
So
3,
if you
oder?
have like a long range unit,
Ja, ja, klar, aber
von dem
you can
einen
kind of put
die
that
Kante
in the middle
zum
of your territory. It's kind of
Objective ist
an
halt
anchor
nicht so
piece,
weit weg.
right? It's like,
Ach so.
okay, well now I
Ja,
have
zum
flexibility.
Objective,
Like
ja, ja.
I can go
Yeah.
attack that
Like
one, or I
range
can
4,
defend
range
this
hatten wir
5
doch
units
bei-
with prepared position.
Yeah, or if
Great.
it's a
Hemd
fast
in
unit
auch.
with one, right? Like now you get that extra flexibility where
Ja,
the
genau.
other units
Ja,
are
oder bei,
I think my favorite
bei
prepared
Danger
position
Close, aber
strip on
Danger
this
Close
one
hat das nie
is deploying
gespielt.
in a little corner right next to their territory. Like that is very
Ja gut, du
close.
kannst halt die
Right,
Auswahl
like
yeah,
range
you
2
have to
guns,
move
you can
not
most get
very
in.
far.
Das
So
Durchbruch immer nur auf dieser
you can
Karte
deploy
spielen.
very, very close to your
Especially
opponent's
both players do
objectives.
that.
Ja, ja,
Yeah,
aber
if both players do it,
das ist
like,
ja
it's
genau das
on.
Ding, ne?
Exciting.
It's
Und,
on.
aber bei Danger Close
time
hattest
to
du die
party.
zwei Teile,
die
jump to the
direkt
next
aneinander
mission,
sind
which is
und
bunker
du hast
assault.
meistens
This one
nie
is
an
for
diesen
anyone
zwei
who
Teilen
loves
aufgestellt,
special
ne? Weil
forces,
da
operatives,
bist du dir einfach nur ins Gesicht
commanders.
gelaufen. Aber jetzt bist du ja quasi gezwungen,
And, of course,
weil
static
du
mode.
das Objective
Yeah,
Token
this
unterhalten
is kind of a
musst.
different
Und dein
flavor
Gegner auch
of,
und das ist genau gegenüber.
intercept
Guckt
the
euch die
signals.
Dark Trooper an, die da einfach alles
you,
töten.
it's the same kind of what we saw before is
Wie
you
Philipp
have to
einfach nur auf den
attack the
Hintergrund
points in
reagiert.
the opponent's side of the
Dark Trooper.
battlefield.
Ich liebe ja auch
And if you
Artwork,
are
ich bin
a
so
commander,
verliebt.
operative, or special forces unit,
Das ist so
you are
erwachsen.
better at that. And it's kind of the same
passt nicht zu dir.
idea as Breakthrough as well, where you have this question of,
Hast du
okay,
eben noch
I
so
have
eine
to attack
Milchschnitte?
their points and defend mine. How do I want to split up my forces, do that? On this one, however, the map is much more centralized, so you're not really having to split your force into two, separate sections to do that.
Das klingt
So
wild.
it's kind of a mashup between some of the
And you have
other
this
missions.
huge score potential of if you can
Yes.
destroy their bunker,
Yeah.
then you're going to score 3, and you also stop them from ever being able to score it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So playing with that and knowing the right cadence at which you want to remove the consistent scoring for the big score, I think makes this scenario much more interesting than it kind of looks at the front, where you're just like, well, we're just going to deploy and we're just both going to score, and the secondary objective is going to break it.
I think this
you
one
can really maximize based on destroying those bunkers and controlling that.
Breakthrough is really intense. Like it says, don't let the opponent score your objective. That it makes it much easier for you to defend your home objectives. They're very advantage-worthy, the ones that are close to your territory. And the first person that breaks generally has, their opponent comes in and scores their objective. They're
Ach ja,
at
ich
a
hab so
huge
Lust, ich
advantage
freu
at that
mich
point.
einfach nur.
So it's a very
bin so
tense
gespannt. Das ist-
sort of standoffish.
Das ist der Wahnsinn. Ich
Ich
weiß gerade gar
glaube,
nicht
ich lerne
verstehen.
ein neues Spiel.
Ja,
This
ich
one
glaube, mir ist
also
gerade
has
der
very
Turn
explosive
rausgefallen.
Yes.
Oh yeah, if you blow up that bunker, then
Yeah, like you roll in round 4 or 5.
Und nochmal, wir sind jetzt 35, 40 Minuten
way
drin.
behind
Da
before.
kommt nochmal so viel.
Sweet. Right? Like, and you get in there with your operatives and your special forces, doing all those cool operative special forces things. I love it.
It's halt
The
krass,
narrative of
das
this
ist
one.
halt
This
Film
is
to
also
Play
one
ist
where we've
es.
seen, in our playtest
Und
games.
dann
Ja, das ist krass.
sonst
Alles kostenlos.
Also man könnte jetzt ja argumentieren, oh, ich habe mir aber die ganzen alten Missionen und diese Upgrade-Packs gekauft. Aber dadurch, dass es kostenlos ist, ist es fein, oder?
Ja, auf jeden Fall.
Ja.
Let's look at the last one, which is
Die können
close
jetzt auch sagen,
pocket.
das können wir sagen.
The weird one.
Oh,
The
Rex.
weird one. So
Oh,
this is
okay.
a good old refused flank
Yeah.
style of
Disarray.
missions. Very classic in terms of
Das alte
strategy and
Disarray.
tactics.
Cool.
Yeah, are you
Kein,
gonna refuse it?
kein,
Are you
kein
gonna split?
fieses,
You're
ich
gonna
laufe
split?
hin und her.
You're gonna try to go for all three,
Eine
or you're just
Seite,
gonna
andere
focus on a
Seite.
couple?
And this one I think gives you
Okay, das ist ja wie
wild
Key
round
Positions,
one
nur dass die Mitte
deployment
doppelt zählt.
questions of like, man, they haven't put anything.
Oh yeah,
over
and
Wie
if
viele Runden
somebody
man
has
einführt.
that,
Oh, yeah.
if somebody has an
Zwei.
additional pass,
Like,
it's brutal.
it's-
So you normally can't pass twice in a row. So you're committing forces
Yeah.
back and forth, back and forth. So this makes it so that deployment question is very, very tense.
Alter, der
otherwise this one's
englische,
pretty chill, besides
amerikanische
its crazy
Chat
deployment.
So,
geht schon
Scoring
ganz
Center
schön
gets you
negativ
2
ab,
victory
teilweise. Ich
points.
verstehe gar nicht warum.
Which is very mobility centered.
den gar nicht
You
angemacht.
generally have to make.
Ja,
Der geht nicht nur ein
4
bisschen
moves
negativ
between
ab, sondern er
two
geht richtig
units to get
negativ
there.
ab.
Right
Ich
around.
verstehe aber nicht warum. Ja, neue Sachen sind immer
That's
erstmal
right.
schlecht.
Yeah, and I think it leads to like interesting questions, strategy-wise. I know in our playtest games, I've thought to myself, all right, do I want to, take the approach of I want to rush that middle point with some fast units that necessarily aren't as durable, or do I want to, wait till later in the game when I have some, infantry units that may be more durable, but it's going to take them longer to get there, right? So it's, how do you want to approach the strategy of taking that center point?
And this
that's
gets
very
really
far away?
exciting with whenever the table setup is not good for, so like deciding table side is huge here because
Auch
this
ein
is,
gutes
this is
Gescroll
one of
hat
the
mir nicht
more
gefallen, was die Leute schreiben,
deployment
mega
like
dumm.
deciding how the forces are matched up scenario. So the table setup here blocking that center objective from one of the flanks means your opponent gets to predict where you're going much more easily, and so it is it can get very intense for competing for blue player to try to get see who gets the which side.
I think that's another really interesting thing that we should chat about, right? Is the idea that having the deployment zones be locked to red and blue player, and then having that, like, you might ask, okay, why am I really competing for red or blue outside of this ability to go first? The goal is that tables are not symmetrically designed, right? No battle takes place over a perfectly symmetrical battlefield. Players must
Außer du
deal
kennst das
with, or
Manalo.
generals must deal with, the idea that
Da
there may
ist
be
alles
terrain that
perfekt
favors one side or
symmetrisch.
the other. And so this really allows players to explore that idea, yet maintain a competitive balance of where there are choices. You're not getting locked into the bad table side. You have every opportunity to take the table side that you think will benefit you at the expense of other things. And it leads, as we found, right? It really opened
dass
up
du halt
table,
den
like table
blauen Player
setups.
zu dir nehmen
You
kannst
can
und
create
damit,
really interesting questions
damit
that
die
felt
Seite
fair
formen
to the
kannst, wenn
players
du willst,
because
wenn
you
du
have
den
the ability
Priority
to
Roll nicht
affect that
gewonnen hast.
stuff. I really love what it does from a, as a hobby miniatures and a
Oder
hobby guy
wieder
who loves building
stark, also wenn
tables
du
and
schlecht
making
würfelst
interesting
am
stuff
Anfang, oder?
and getting as much terrain on the table as
Wenn du
possible. Right? Like, for
letzten
me,
Bann
for
hast,
Dallas
also
and
die
I,
letzte Karte aus deinem Deck nehmen kannst oder blauer
possibilities it
Spieler werden
opens up
kannst.
in terms of just asking those questions, making each
Ja,
game
das stimmt.
feel impactful, making
Aber
the battlefield
das ist
part
ja
of
eh
the
alles random,
story
also
of
du
the
weißt ja nicht, welche
battle.
Karte kommt.
In
Ja gut,
ways
aber
that,
ich kann nicht immer
you
sagen,
don't see
bei einem
that
schlechten
in
Tisch,
every
wenn ich
miniatures
schlecht
game. A lot
würfel,
of the
dass ich
times they
die
rely on the
bessere
idea
Seite
that,
habe.
like, well, if you put a building on this corner, put a building
Richtig,
on
ja.
that corner.
Wenn,
If you put a thing here, put it
aber
over there, right? Like, make
du
sure
hast ja,
that it
du
is
hast ja das,
fair.
das
And,
Secondary
you know,
Objective
that's
gesehen mit
fine,
dem,
but
mit
Whenever
dem
it's not
Suppression.
fair, the
Wenn
gameplay
du jetzt
gets
gegen
very
Krennic spielst,
Right,
dann
that's
holst du
what
dir nicht
that's what really brings out, I think, the
blaue
tactics
Spieler,
and the
machst du
strategy.
die
And of
Secondary
course,
Objective weg.
players have complete control of that. If they want to continue to set up with like symmetrical designs or take
Ja.
turns setting up terrain, but
Ja.
the reality is that this system does really allow
Ja, ist wahrscheinlich kompliziert.
and account for the idea that
Das
the
ist
Ich spiele eher auf
battlefield is not
Fenstischen. Wenn
symmetrical,
Finn die
that
aufbaut,
it
sind
is
die
a
meistens
player
okay.
within, and that the choice of deployment edge or territory is absolutely a critical consideration and one that players will vie over just as much as they will for a priority mission objective or a secondary or even maybe the advantage.
Ja,
if
hier
they feel
in
like
dem,
they're more expansive on it. So
im Chat
everything
schreibt gerade,
about
sind nur ein paar
all the
Änderungen,
changes
das
to the
flippt das
pocket,
ganze
right?
Game,
It's all
ja,
about
auf jeden
adding the
Fall. Das
interactivity,
macht das ganz,
those
ganz
tactical and
anders.
strategic considerations, making the game feel alive. Speaking of making the game feel
Oh,
more
that's what it is.
exciting and alive, we do have a couple of core rules changes. We don't have slides for these. We're just going to
Core
discuss
rules
them.
changes.
But these are important ones to bring up. So first and foremost, Star Wars has always been about, Star Wars Legion especially is about capturing the idea of these big battles,
God.
these cool engagements, all this stuff. The game has been around, as we said, for 6
Die ändern
years
das
now.
Game.
Ja, Punkte.
Players have been with it for that entire time, growing their collections, building their armies. It was really starting to show that the 800-point level was kind of,
Mehr Punkte,
it was an
mehr Punkte,
artificial
mehr Punkte.
ceiling that was stymieing some really cool choice from players. It was forcing less interesting list builds, and it also was just not allowing the game to really live its full best life and live that kind of narrative on the table that we want to see of these big Star Wars legions, right? The name of the game is Legion. We want to see
Yes,
legions
yeah.
of troops on the table.
Schon immer gesagt.
So we've increased the game size with the changes to the mission objectives, with the changes to cover, which we're going to talk about next.
neue
And
Cover.
of course, with deployment and all of this, we were able to increase the game size
Yeah,
to 1,000 points,
1000 Punkte, 1000
which
Punkte,
is
1000
it's a
Punkte.
moderate change, right?
Let's
Jetzt
go.
kann
we went to
jetzt kann ich
1600,
endlich
got an
meinen
increase.
Doku spielen und dann
But-
ganze 800 Punkte wieder.
But those 200 points really open up a lot of options, from upgrades to different units to adding maybe a couple of like support units,
To taking
taking
100
more
points.
characters.
112.
112.
I don't know about that
I
yet.
think my favorite part of
112?
the increase in the points change is that I
Das
remember
kostet
back
112
to
Punkte?
when we were working on
Modelle.
Asajj Ventress. And we're like, all right, we have this cool character. Thematically, she should do things with Count Dooku. Well, when you take her and Count Dooku in the same army, that approaches very quickly half your total army points, or a third.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things about this, this extra 200 points is it gives you just enough room to, if you want to have two, kind of expensive characters, you can do that. Or if you want to take some more expensive toys to add some spice to your army,
and you don't end
can
up at
do
like
that.
7
You have
activations.
two tanks
Right.
and, the
you're
rest
not
of
you're
the
not
army,
constrained, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not giving up, you can still have the core of your army and some of the toys you want, but now have room to do that and not have to give
And
things up for
I
it.
think the Asajj Dooku thing is a really important bit, right? One of
Yeah.
the consistent things that we see from all the players whenever they have discussions about things they wish they're
geht
dreaming
wie
about
immer
will
nur
come to the game,
Dooku und
or when
Ventress.
we ask directly, like, what are the things that you want to see?
Ich spreche mir gerade
Star
aus der
Wars
Seele.
is
Das
about
ist die
the
wichtigste
characters, right?
Diskussion, die
It
Legion
just-
je
and, Well,
hatte.
Legion is an army game, and therefore the units and
Die
the army
Doku
itself is the primary
Ja, aber
point.
gut, dann kann ich auch
Seeing those
Feldbilder
iconic
besser
characters
spielen.
on the table,
Auch okay.
seeing them work together like we
Geh
do
mit deinen
see,
alten Männern irgendwo anders
in the
hin.
Clone War shows, in the big battles at Endor,
sagt
being able
der
to
junge,
take
dynamische
multiples of
Dooku.
the original trilogy characters
wollte grad
together.
sagen.
That's super important. But with 800 points,
Red
it
nicht
just,
so über
it's
Saruman.
not very realistic to be able to do that and see a lot of success, right? At the point that you're playing all of the original trilogy heroes together in one list, you're kind of playing a for funsies. You shouldn't expect to go and do super well with it because you're just lacking tools based on the points limitation.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway from this is the goal was to open, one, increase, the spectacle of the game, but two, to open up avenues for players to, kind of build the armies they want. Whereas before, like, oh, I really want to do this, but like that may not be as viable as I want because I'm constrained by the point cost limit. So we really wanted to open up avenues for players to play, the armies with the play style or the flavor or the selection of units that they wanted.
And the other big part of the spectacle and kind of increasing the scope and really leaning into the idea that this is Star Wars Legion and we should see legions is that you're going to notice as we dive into the rebalances that there's a brand new upgrade for most of the core units. In fact, I think all of the core units got this in this group of rebalances. I think. No? Did we not do it? It doesn't matter. Most of them got it. I'll say 90% because he's going to actually do the percentage. It's fine.
Ben will.
Somebody will now.
Somebody will now. They all have a brand new upgrade which allows them to effectively double their unit size. So if your maximum was 6, it's now 10. If you have a 51 or an
15 B1
it's now 14. So these open up really cool tactical options, especially when combined with all the things we've talked about with missions.
Was ist mit dem Angriff auf die Wookies?
But that is another big thing. Now,
It's going to lead us straight into cover.
all of this is only possible by probably one of the most significant core rules changes, which is the change to cover. And I'm going to let all of the math folks talk about cover,
Bitte mach das
line
mit
of
den
sight,
komischen
and
Sichtlinien
why that
weg.
half-inch range tool is going to get used all the time in your games.
Yeah,
Die Füße
so
vom ATS, die geben keine
the big
Cover.
changes to cover are that
Du gibst
it's
gleich keine
consistent
Deckung mehr.
based off of what the size of your unit is. It doesn't matter if you're firing with 1 B1 or 13 clones. What 11 clones.
Clones.
The cover's going to affect you the same. So we changed to static from a static system where light cover blocks 1, heavy cover blocks 2, to rolling a die for each hit result on the attack rolls.
And very specifically not crit results.
Not
So
crit,
still ignore cover.
Okay.
Hört sich cool
So
an.
effectively,
Also
instead
ich
of
muss
cover
jetzt
just
würfeln,
being a
wie viel
flat
Cover ich bekomme.
modifier to the number of hits, it is now a randomized roll.
Yeah, you're rolling 1 white die, and for light cover, you only get 1 of the results, and for heavy cover, you get 2 of the results on the white die. Yep. So,
And then whatever you have left over, you will then have to make saving throws as normal, right?
yep.
Aber dann ist
And
es ja
there's a
ab 6
bunch of
Würfeln
explanation
egal.
article that's going up at the end of this.
Also sechs
for
Quasi
how we've done this,
schwere
math
Deckel mit
behind
einem Drittel
it,
weg.
all sorts of implications of it. It's
Also
portion
wenn du
of
so
it.
deine
Yeah,
Before you get into the math
500
portion of it,
Würfel Schuss
that's
gleich
it.
The
wirfst,
big
geht
ones to
mehr
hit
Deckung
right
weg.
are that one of the
Ja,
major
also
things
mehr
this
Würfel
change
kaufen.
does is
Besser.
that
Das
it
ist ein Scharfschützen
dramatically
OP.
affects the range at which dice pools become either meaningless or so effective that there's no real reason to roll, right? So the predetermined nature of how the math works out dramatically changes. It also creates a more engaging and exciting system, right? I
Whenever
think-
you flip your token over, you can always do something.
Correct.
with that unit.
And I think the vast majority of players, right? There are always going to be players
Das
who
hört
just love
sich auch ziemlich
predictability.
cool an.
But the vast majority of us who come here, we play dice games
Ja,
because we
ich
want
kann
to
endlich
see
meine
the
ART wieder
spikes,
spielen.
right? We want to see the amazing outcome where you roll 15 white dice and somehow you hit blocks on
Ja.
all of them with your light cover from
Barrage
Happens
dürfte
every
fies
time we
sein.
play
And-
test, and I hate it.
And
I
you also want
cannot
to
make
see
a cover save to save
you
my
also
life.
want to see the result where
Good at
like
winning these
you
games.
just need to roll 2 results on your white defense dice to maybe hold out, and you roll nothing, right? So adding that unpredictability, it brings the chaos of battle. It brings the unknown.
Aber
of
Finn, da
battle
musst du mehr würfeln, das
to
ist
the
schlecht
game,
für dich.
and it also means that
Chaos.
every unit
Embrace
gets to
the
compete
chaos.
throughout the entire game.
Chaos.
Eliminating 2
Jetzt kann
members
jeder,
of the
jetzt
unit
kann
to
jeder,
reduce their
egal
dice
was er
pool
von einem
to
spielt,
effectively what was
jeder kann jetzt über weiße
mathematically
Würfel lässt er
Yes.
immer jedes Spiel.
Now-
Oh, meine
now
weißen
doesn't-
Würfel
now
waren so
doesn't necessarily
schlecht.
happen.
Oh mein Gott.
Because those players can do that, of course, there's that element of luck.
As a consequence of that, even small units being dangerous, the game is overall more dangerous.
It is more
Right.
lethal. Yeah.
Right, more lethal because those small units being able to participate still means
Well,
that
it's huge, right?
it cut out a large portion of the attacks of the game, and so this units just keep activating, and get to do something on their activation much more often.
And how you determine if you're in cover or not, you're going to use that new half range tool,
Which 3 inches.
which is 3 inches, which will be included with the files. That are
There's a
going
little
up
print
into
play
this
cut
panel.
out,
Yep.
or you can make your own.
Make your own 3-inch widget as well.
Um,
And
finde es
I
schön,
think
dass
this
das
was,
fest
you know, the
sein
3-inch. So this is one of the things that was most exciting about going back into this. You know, we did the full core rules update,
Yeah.
and we affected how cover and line of sight worked, and we did it in order to try to streamline the process. But one of the after effects of that was the fact that, you know, without a way to measure accurate ranges to terrain that you might be taking cover against, it was very easy on a Legion table, if it was set up properly, to always have cover. And that was not necessarily an ideal, but we were willing to accept it for what it brought in the other ways.
it wasn't time to add the half range
Correct.
tool yet, right?
But by adding the half tool, not only are we now able to measure a lot of different things for scenario setup to contesting ranges, not being base to base anymore, securing ranges, we also have a way in which to make cover meaningful, but also not omnipresent.
Ja, das
Right,
ist
so
cool.
that there is
Jetzt kann
more
ich nicht mit 3 Meter hinter einer
tactical
Barrikade
consideration in
stehen
movement and
und
placement
decken
and
durch
all
die
these
Barrikade.
things.
Das ist,
Ja.
And
Das
so
war auch
it was a
scheiße
really
ja, das war
huge,
einfach, das fand ich gut.
addition to the to the game and the system that we're excited to finally be bringing in and goes along with this cover thing. And the one thing I do want to touch is we talked about how smaller units are now more effective and can continue to participate. But I think the flip side that we also have to recognize with the cover system is that, you know,
Larger units are not.
in original, as we started talking about how are these larger units going to function within Legion, it was very quickly apparent that they just blew out the game because they could overcome that static cover of
Very easily.
two basically two negated hits. Now, because your cover save is effectively equal to the number of hits you suffer, those
Makes
bigger
sense,
dice
yeah.
pools have more variance.
Well, it's one clone trooper is just as lethal if there's one clone trooper or as if there's 10, right? So combining dice pools into large buckets is no longer just the sole winning strategy for destroying units quickly, right?
But there's still some sort of
Ja,
like
es hat die
things
Klone
that
halt auch so
are
stark
like
gemacht in
more
letzter
profile
Zeit.
and
Oder die
armor
ganzen
Dodge
Armeen, die
right?
gut
Ja,
konnten, große
sobald
Tools.
sobald
But getting rid of that
sobald du
floor
über 10
really
Würfel oder
helps
über 12 Würfel
smaller
hast, war es
dice
einfach,
pools
war es einfach dumm.
feel
Have
more
it hard.
Keine
like,
Max-
yeah, where they can
Yes.
do something besides just put a suppression token on
Yeah,
somebody.
the amount again, the amount
Ja, aber
that the
jetzt hast du
band
halt
went
mehr
from
Würfel
here
gegen
of
Fallsupport,
dice
das macht's
pool
halt schlechter.
effectiveness to like here was huge, and those
Ja, aber
impacts will be
trotzdem,
felt throughout
also
all
die
the new development that you're going to be
nimmst ja
seeing.
trotzdem nur
the
noch ein
hits that
Drittel von
come
den
out,
Würfeln weg.
the ability
Max,
to make
also wenn
scenarios that have
statistisch.
interesting layouts and deployments, to have iterative scoring. So much of it was based on the idea of breaking out of kind of that restriction, that artificial restriction
aber bei
put into
Supporten
place
geht dann
by
die
heavy
Deckung
cover
halt nicht mehr.
or cover in general just being a flat, predictable value, and instead turning it back into
Ja,
something
das
that can be
stimmt,
very
aber
powerful. It can lift you up or it
Einfach
can
da
let you
Dark
fall.
Trooper Einheiten spielen, die alle
Yeah,
Blast haben.
and
aber
while we're on the
problematisch.
subject of like cover and durability, one of the reasons why we,
Nur noch Nahkampf
going back to
spielen.
the bigger units for a second, one of the reasons we decided to do that was a lot of the missions have objectives that are more centrally located, and the fact that we now score progressively.
Nee, es
instead
ist
of,
keine
at the
neue
beginning of the
Edition,
game
das
on
ist ganz
certain rounds,
explizit gesagt worden.
means that units have to, stand in a place where they can get threatened, a lot more. Right, and so with the previous cover system, we were seeing that it was hard to either dislodge units or units were no longer effective. So these large units kind of give units their ability to kind of sit out on a point and take shots and still stay in the fight. But then you're spending more points on it, right? You're putting more eggs in one, significantly more points. You're putting more eggs in one basket, right? And because these smaller dice pools are now more relevant, you have to ask the question like, all right, do I want one big unit that can take a few hits before it goes down, or do I want to take a few smaller units, right? Because those dice pools are more relevant now with the cover change.
And I can spread out.
I can spread out more. It gives me advantage in deployment, because I have more units and I can decide
And absolutely
when to commit.
important to note, right? A full-size unit of 10 still only counts as one unit for
Correct.
contesting, whereas two smaller units,
Yep.
which are effectively the same point cost of that, depending on the units and upgrades and stuff, wind up counting for two. And I think that's the last little point to make about all of this, is that as we looked at this, the goal wasn't to move the game into everything being a 10 unit core,
Absolutely.
right? A 10 trooper core.
Minuten.
The goal was to create something that was a interesting
Wie
and,
noch 9 Minuten.
Nein,
fun
es sind doch
option, and
39 Minuten.
largely to
Ach so,
see
ich kann kein
players
Mathe.
identify with
Ah,
Ja.
39
and I
Minuten.
think one of the really great things is and again, this is a 3-year process of testing these things, reiterating and all of this. It's effectively what we've been doing secretly behind the scenes, not saying anything for so long as our like little inside started to burst. Was it's not a win if they're useless, right? If they're just cute and you look at them and you're like, well, I could take 10, but why would I ever do that? That's silly. It wasn't a win if it was, well, the only way to play the game is to take 10. It was only a win if it was, there are times where I want to take a full-size unit over two smaller units. There's times where I want to take two smaller units over a full-size unit. And a lot of the time I want to have a mix of both. Right?
Maximizing heavy weapons is another reason why you'd want the smaller units, because you still only get one heavy weapon.
There's just
And
a lot more choice.
There's a
in
lot of
choosing
choices.
your core units in particular.
And I think the other thing that was really interesting about that is going back to how we talked about each scenario building and kind of focusing around different list builds or asking different questions. where you will find yourself looking at those options between a full-size core unit and a min-size core unit somewhat comes down to what 3 cards you're putting into your primary objective deck and what you
Kommt halt auch
want to
nicht
play.
klar, dass ich 6x14
Okay, with that said, we have a bazillion
We gotta go.
rebalance cards to go into. So we're gonna look at the Rebel Troopers first. So the Rebel Troopers are
was
the
ein
first
geiles
rebalance
Artwork.
card.
Alter.
So one, you can see the amazing
Agil
graphic
und nimble.
design that Ryan Ritter
Agile one,
designed
nice.
together. I love this new look.
Nice.
So cool.
You're going to notice
Ich hasse
that
alles, was ich
all
sehe.
keywords are just now keywords. There is no reminder text. One, that makes localization much more achievable and cleaner, but also one of the things with the reminder text is we didn't always have room to put
Oh, wie
the
schön
rules on the
das
card,
Correct.
which
I
meant that
want
new
to
players
have
could
it.
look at the reminder text
Und da steht jetzt
and
ein kleiner
40
Eis.
Punkte immer noch,
Würfel.
it
ne?
could change. This just makes the whole
Ja, Agile One
system
ist
of
sau
referencing
gut. Hallo,
things
du läufst
cleaner
rein,
and
hast
more
direkt einen,
accurate.
hast direkt einen
I love
Dodge-Token.
the fact that we get to get
Läufst
Preston
öfters.
Ja, du
these
läufst
artists
zweimal
full
und hast
scale
2
on the back of the
Dodge-Token.
card now.
Absolutely.
It turns them into a very trading card look when you have them in your binder. So just
das sieht
incredible,
das
like
Artwork ist so
incredible
gut,
work
ey.
over all
Das
around.
ist wirklich stark.
Echt
Kudos
mega
to
gut
all of the
aus.
folks who went in
Das
and
ist ein
made
purer
these
Porno,
new
was hier
cards.
gerade abläuft. Das
This
ist,
new
das ist schon
design
kein Star Wars
is
Video mehr hier.
just saying. All right, let's talk about Rebel Troopers real quick.
So I think before we
Alter,
talk
sind
about
die
Rebel
cool.
Troopers,
Ah!
we gotta back up a second. We gotta go. I'm gonna
Nicht
back this
back
car
up,
up for a
nicht
second.
back up,
We're
back
gonna,
up.
you know, one of the things we talked about is we really want to lean into each of the factions having their own identity.
Yes.
Okay, mehr
Right?
Faction
Like Empire
Identity.
having
Das ist
their
gut.
identity,
Sehr
Rebels,
gut.
Separatist. And so as part of that, we redid all of the core units in the game. As part of that,
Okay,
game
alle
to,
Core Units sind
We
neu.
looked at every core
Well, we
unit
looked
in
at
the
every
game.
core unit, right?
Yeah.
And tweaked them in
Oh
some
cool,
way
ich
to
kriege Mischung in
further
meinem
play
Sturmtruppen
into
dann
not only
praktisch.
that faction identity, but to also
genau.
ensure that each core unit
ist das
had
Gegenstück
a
zu einem
role in the army,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah,
they,
yes.
you know, some more specialized than
Druiden
others.
schlagen sich
depending on
jetzt
what the unit is,
gegenseitig
but
kaputt.
that, you know, you have a role for each different
Wäre
kind of core
können.
unit, and that role kind of dovetails into the greater faction identity.
Rebel
Alright,
Troopers.
let's
Now
talk
we're going.
Rebel Troopers.
Beautiful.
Speaking of faction identity, one of the things about Rebels, they're dodgy, they're nimble, they're hard to pin down, they kind of fold once you apply any pressure to them. Agile 1 and nimble.
Yep. So nimble, what they had before. Agile 1, every time they move, they get a dodge.
Yeah, so we really needed a unit for Rebels that could move up the table, and really liked getting next to objectives, right? Like this was
klingt einfach gut.
so Rebel Troopers getting
Ja, total.
agile means that they can move twice in round 1, get 2 dodge tokens. They're
Ich
quite a
verstehe
bit
nicht, wie man
quite a bit
das
safer
Artwork
than
nicht mögen
any
kann, habe ich
other
gerade eben bei den Leuten gesehen.
unit that's deploying off the side that's not getting benefits like that. So
Das sieht
they,
total realistisch
they
aus, das
are
ist mega.
Das ist saugut.
your
Auf dem Berg werde ich auch sterben.
core of the army that can go and do objectives for you.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the different roles of each of these units. This is sort of the generalist core
Yeah.
unit for Rebels.
But
right?
leans into that faction identity of being mobile and
Absolutely.
dodgy, but maybe not as durable as.
And then really quick, we're going to jump and look at the new upgrade cards. So the upgrade card style has completely changed as well. They've gone to full LCG style cards to provide
Oh
more
ja,
text
okay.
room. And of
Noch
course,
mehr
it's a
Text
little
an
easier to
Upgrade-Karten,
organize, so
sehr
you
gut.
don't need to manage 2
Die
different
kriegen ihn
cards.
doppelt.
This is
Die kriegen ihn
effectively
doppelt.
how all of the
Ja, aber kostet auch
Squad upgrades.
squad
Doll
upgrade
Punkte.
cards
Die Cohesion verändert
for
sich.
adding
Kostet Doll
those
Punkte.
additional troopers to the normal units. So you'll see here, add 5 Rebel
Was, wie
Trooper
geil ist
miniatures.
das denn?
Indomitable
Guck
lets
dir mal
you
diese
lose a
Art
little
an,
extra
Leute.
suppression. You get a little extra cohesion range. To
Cohesion is
Das
now
ist
measured
mal
with
Jahr
range
in
tools,
4.
to point
Range
out.
tools,
So we get a
yes.
half range instead of
Okay,
the
Cohesion machen wir jetzt auch
And
mit
this is
Range
range
Tools,
1,
alles
so
klar.
you can utilize several pieces of terrain. And then it can be come out of transports because there are too many of
Gut,
them.
das mit dem Halb ist ja im Endeffekt,
Alright,
glaube ich,
so
schon
let's go
einsam.
ahead and take a look at the icon, the very first of his kind in Legion, Luke Skywalker, hero of the rebellion. He's got quite the glow up here. So if we want to really quickly just kind of go over some of the larger design beats on what we were looking to do
gab einen
with this
Commander,
version
Luke?
of Luke.
Yeah, so Luke has
Warum ist der so stark?
a whole charge in with a lightsaber theme.
Ich weiß nicht, was der vorher hatte.
very,
Ich kann
very,
nicht
very good.
mitreden.
He's very, very good at it. But
Vorher war
he's
nicht
still
redenswert.
schießt
learning the
voll gut.
ropes and
Ja.
still deciding exactly
Ach,
what he
du
wants to do.
Scheiße.
So he has some
120, was hat der
other
vorher
options
gekostet?
for
160.
whenever
Ich würde sagen, der
it's
soll-
not good to commit. So
Ich würde
he
sagen, der
has
sollte nicht
his
Hero of the Rebellion
blaster,
heißen,
which
sondern
has long
Son of
shot
the
now, so
Chosen
you
One.
can aim and shoot at range 3 if it's too dangerous for him to commit. And
kann's Range
he has
3
Inspired
schießen.
2 now to keep his army in line.
He's the hero of the rebellion.
He's the hero of the rebellion.
he
They
gets-
look up to him
Yeah.
like a big brother. Let's talk real quick about
Ja,
his
Long
points,
Shot.
because this is going to be a trend throughout all of the Force users now. In
Aber
that
gut,
you're going to
wie
notice some
kriegt ihr das
significant point
eben?
reductions. There's one specific reason about that. And that's
Ja
for a
gut, er
card
kann
we don't
ziehen und
have,
schießen
but
auf
it's called
3,
Force
aber er
Push.
könnte ja auch laufen und schießen auf
He wants to
2.
walk
Das
us
ist nicht
through
der
that.
große
There's been a
Unterschied.
significant increase in the point cost of Force Push because Force Push is incredibly powerful. It is even more powerful when you start introducing
Okay,
Und es ist
Force Push.
raus.
it
Force
allows
Push
you to
kostet
move around
mehr.
enemy troops. There's a million different tricks you can do with it, all that kind of stuff. So we found that Force Push existing as an upgrade was massively inflating the cost of a lot of these Force user characters. So by transferring the points from the characters to Force Push, we can now have versions of these characters that cost significantly less points that do not have Force Push, that allow you to take a lot more things in your
So you
army.
get this Luke Skywalker, which has a ton of options, can still take burst of speed, you know.
Yeah, you can still take
for
all the
whatever
other
he
Force
commits.
powers.
Yeah.
And I think that opens up a lot of space for these Force users of, you know, your first option is not necessarily going to be, oh, okay, I'm going to put Force Push on them, right? It opens up a lot of play styles for these characters now that they're at a lower price point.
Ja gut,
You were
es
paying
war auch schon so, dass
as we
das einfach
discovered, you were paying
zusammen war.
an
Entweder machst du
invisible
es auf die
tax for
Karte
some of
drauf
the-
oder du
for
machst
some
halt
of the
eine Wahl
upgrades that you
draus, ne?
take because those upgrades were so
Damit es
potent,
taktisch
but they
interessant
were
wird.
deflated in price because it was just assumed
Oh mein Gott,
in
ist das
some ways
gut.
that you would take them. In order to obviously open up list building and create more choice, obviously moving that, and which we did in a couple of other situations as well, but not as
Ich glaube,
significant.
habe ich gerade einen
as
Star
Force
Wars
Push. It's a
Schlaganfall.
huge deal. Let's go to Leia Organa. This is the next refresh
Die hat
card that we have to show.
Exemplar.
Wie ihre
Leia's
Mutter.
a bit of a
Alle-
mix between commanding army, which she's very good at,
Ey, wieso
and
werden denn
shooting.
ihre Rebellen so
So
gut?
she can be very
Ja,
active
Sharpshooter
with
too.
Getting dodge
hatte sie
tokens,
schon
take
aber
cover,
drei
Das
rote
ist
Würfel.
immer, ja.
giving
3 rote Würfel
those
ist
out
gut,
to
ja.
multiple units
1
and
ist 3.
herself,
Auf 1 ist
and
3.
with exemplar.
Aber jetzt keinen Pierce mehr.
Kein Pierce.
Yeah, that's the big one.
So Exemplar is, we sort
Das
of
ist ein Ewok
view
auf
that
der Art. Das
as
ist ein Ewok.
a
Drei
very much
Ewoks.
a commander ability.
Oh mein Gott, das
right?
sind
So this is
Ewoks.
them
Sie
leading
weiß
their
nicht
troops.
was.
This is them giving them tactical advice. This is them doing
Karte
these
ist schon
things.
wieder cool.
So you're going to see
So
this
ist
pop up
nicht.
a lot. And this is going to pop up on the
Der
characters
arme,
that
der
are
arme
not
Daniel
normally,
Fliesen, der jetzt wahrscheinlich
excellent
tausende
combat
Ewoks noch
pieces
mehr
that are
holt.
more that stand back.
Hat sie noch Z? Sie hatte
Don't
vorher noch
fight,
keinen
which Leia
Trainingsslot,
obviously
ne?
is
Das
very
finde ich gut.
capable. Piece
hat
with
sie
sharpshooter too.
Das
so
stimmt.
dice on range attack, all that kind of
Ja,
stuff.
die ist halt trainiert.
Fantastic in that.
Deshalb steht
sense.
Hal Hahn auf
Maybe
die.
not the best example. of
Well,
that,
no,
but-
I think it is actually because what Exemplar does that's kind of subtle versus, you know, just the normal take cover is take cover. It really ties, you know, that handing out tokens to her activation. So now when she goes in the round is very timing dependent. Exemplar, you know, frees it up to, okay, I can hand some tokens out, but I can keep some of myself, you know, for my friends around me to use. Frees up her actions a bit more, so she can contribute in other ways, like moving or attacking, you know.
And take cover and those other type rules that gave out dodge tokens really just said, hey, shoot the other unit, right? Whereas Exemplar, you take cover, you give it to Leia, she can get her dodge tokens, and now you can't shoot anyone near Leia, so you have to interact with this rule that's giving
It's
out
a great
these
way to
dodge tokens,
facilitate
right?
the support, giving out support just in time.
Yeah. Notably, take cover, spotter, bolster, and those other token handout actions have now been increased to range 2. So
Alle-
again,
alles
this is to
Token
open up, you know,
Sharings.
some play patterns for these characters
Jetzt
so that they
range
can do
2.
things other than, you
Ja,
know,
finde ich
just
gut.
move in their token handout
There
action.
were
Finde
some
ich nicht
updates to
gut, ich
Exemplar
bin
as well,
Fan.
so it doesn't work entirely exactly as it did before, I
Yeah, a
believe.
little bit.
So make sure to check that out as well.
All right, let's jump to the Rebel Officer. I think the big takeaway here is another addition of Exemplar in order to kind of maximize the idea that this guy is just all about leading.
Hier, bitte.
He doesn't.
Ihr bitte.
He just yells
Ihr
orders
braucht
and
dieses.
people do it.
Jeder bekommt dieses
They
Keyword.
love
Ist
it.
okay.
Or they don't.
Du kriegst Tokens. Du kriegst Tokens. Du kriegst Tokens.
Let's go to everyone's favorite droid boy R2D2.
Just a little
Ah,
geil.
Just a little guy
Oh,
with a secret
geil.
mission.
Alter.
He gets secret mission. He gets to sneak in with infiltrate and inconspicuous.
Das
and
Symbol
try
ist
to
nur
get
mit
across the
Nahkampfberg
board
weiter 1,
with
oder?
his speed 1, which
Ja, das stimmt.
he can very capably.
He's free. He's not grounded anymore.
So,
yeah.
you want to talk
Ah,
really quick
Kakzeta.
about the change to infiltrate and what that means?
So infiltrate,
infiltrieren.
whenever you act, so you start off the board still, but the first time you activate in the
Das
game,
Artwork ist gut.
you place yourself
Das
within
Artwork
the
ist mega.
territory instead of deploying off of the board edge. So that gets
Ja,
him
okay.
9 inches up the
Das ist-
table
finde
to
ich ganz gut,
anywhere
glaub ich.
inside of your territory, mostly.
So it's super flexible.
Right.
And I think another big hit here is that secret mission used to be a potential 33% victory point swing.
Yeah, now it's
now,
1 in 12.
Now it's 112.
Yeah.
One set.
It's kind of like a tertiary objective.
Yeah, it's still very good and can be majorly impactful to winning the game, but it doesn't skew the overall win experience like it
Right.
had before when there were many fewer victory points on the table.
R2D2 is a great way to break ties, basically, break stalemates.
Bounty has also had a similar adjustment to just being 1 victory point.
Let's go ahead and take a look at another core unit for the Rebels, which is Fleet Troopers. Charge, I think, is the big
Charge,
note
was?
here.
Yeah. These
Die
are my
können
boys.
ihre Pistole im Nahkampf
They
benutzen.
also got
Das ist
melee
geil.
profile on their pistol. So they are
Ja, da
very,
hast du auch
very
nicht mehr
deadly
elend
and
viele
still very, very fragile. So you have to
Waffenprofile,
hide
sondern-
them and
Oh, die
ambush
können
them.
bestimmt auch groß werden.
They are quite, a great ambush unit.
Ich hasse es.
And I think comparing them to Rebel Troopers, right? Rebel Troopers have the agile, they have the nimble, they can get up the table, they can be much more durable.
Wie geil das
Fleet
Artwork
Troopers are a
wieder
lot
ist,
more
ey.
aggressive.
Ich bin so
Ja,
froh.
auf jeden Fall.
Pistols with
They're not
charge.
as durable.
Certainly not as durable. So that's sort of the main difference between those two core units, right? Is that they're both moving up the table, and they both can move up the table. But the Fleet Troopers are not going to be hanging out for too long, and hopefully your Rebel Troopers will be hanging out for a little longer.
You got to be really crafty.
They're not here for a long
Profil.
time.
You got to be really crafty if you're going to get that full, 10-person
Auf jeden Fall.
Fleet
Ja, die
20,
Karte sieht viel erwachsener
20
aus.
dice attack. You got to be careful.
And then the final core, and of course, just like the Rebel Troopers and everything else, you can obviously jump this unit up to the full 10 trooper squad. Rebel Veterans are going to be the next one we're going to look at. This kind of rounds out the
Gleiche
three core
Artwork.
choices for Rebels. Prepared positions.
Das war aber
No
schon
profile,
aber-
okay.
Let's
Das war
discuss
schon immer sehr gut.
infiltrate. Says that you start off the board.
Und
When
das
you
Prepared
get your
Position
order to
hatten wir das vorher
activate,
auch
you place
schon?
yourself anywhere in
Ja.
your territory. Prepared positions
Haben
is
sie mal gesagt, glaub
You
ich.
deploy before the game
Ja,
starts.
genau.
And
Prepared
you
Position
start
ist
with
quasi
a dodge
du
token. So this
deployst,
is,
also bevor Runde
you're
1.
in a sort of
Okay.
fixed stationary position at the beginning,
You're dug in.
and you're dug in. And these guys are
Low profile
excellent at
is
dugging in with low profile,
profile is sehr
digging
gut, ja.
in. So they are your kind of
Die
entrenched.
Frage, was Low Profile jetzt
Yep.
noch macht.
Yeah.
I think
know
the
the
speed is
speed
much
one
slower
here,
now.
right?
Yes,
One
they're-
is the big one.
Well,
They're
Speed
very
eins
much
ist
the
krass,
rule of
ja.
like, all right, I am going to have these guys defending, my side of the battlefield and my points,
wenn du
and
ein
they're
Spiel, wo
going
man
to use their
ein-
range
irgendwie
to
laufen ja nicht
project
mal,
and
dann
help
ist
the rest
okay.
of the army advance that way. But they themselves are probably not going to get across the battlefield.
And of course, the emplacement trooper coordinate is just lovely.
Which leads us to our next
speaking
card.
of-
Speaking of,
1.4 FD laser cannon team, please.
yeah. So this unit also got prepared position, so you kind of get to dictate, those fire zones and control the
Maximum
board,
firepower.
sections of the board
Hatten
before
die nicht
your
mal
opponent
Click
moves on,
Convert?
right? So you can
Right,
threaten,
das war's, EUF.
and play into that deployment game. All right, well, do I really want to commit a unit over here, knowing that I've got, a laser
sonst
cannon
kein
team
anderes
staring me
Profil,
down that
ne?
might have an order because there might be a rebel veteran unit next to it.
Having the fixed, having the objectives, know where all the objectives are before, you know where units are going to go. So being stationary, you can get around it and place them in range 5 to threaten multiple objectives.
You got to shut lanes down.
Ja,
with them.
sehe
Right.
ich. Doch, finde ich.
Let's go ahead and talk really quick.
Ja,
We're
man
gonna
muss
look
ja
at the
auch
Rebel
denken,
Commando
jetzt mit
Strike
dem, was Sie
Team.
jetzt in Zucover
However, this is
gesagt
gonna
haben,
be a
stand
kind of a
das hier
discussion
auch
of strike
drin,
teams
ob
in
das
general, because strike teams have had a pretty distinct change
Die
from how they
Detachment-
work
Ja,
in
die
army construction.
Detachments.
Yeah, the main
okay.
rule is detachment. So you need to take one of the full units of rebel commandos in order to take a strike team. So they
Okay, du
come
kannst jetzt nicht
paired,
mehr 3 Strike
and,
Teams einfach so
that-
spammen.
that detachment also makes it so they don't fill out the maximum rank
requirement.
Drei
requirement
groß, drei klein.
for our special forces.
Weißt du mal,
so you
was
can
sagen die
have
mir jetzt
3
hier
full
Rebellen? Wen
units of rebel
interessiert das? Die sollen mir
commandos
Separatisten
Ist
and
so.
sagen.
3 strike teams. Yes.
And remember, when
Gut
it
ist, danach kommt sofort das Imperium, denke ich mal, weil
Ich habe schon
Wenn die
immer,
logisch
ich
sein
hab schon
sollen.
immer
sniper
gesagt,
teams
dass Rebellen
especially
die beste
will be
Fraktion
very
sind.
effective with the you're not no longer just plinking one person with Pierce, right?
We made points changes.
Yeah.
Yes, the snipers are crazy.
Let's go ahead and take a look at the ATRT. This is going to lead into a larger discussion about vehicles. So remember, as we discussed,
Okay,
vehicles
das
can
anders.
now score. So they can contest, they
Armor
can secure
2
objectives, so they're
und,
just
Convert.
as effective at that.
Ah, okay, aber sie können komplett scoren.
hatten die vorher schon Scout 1 mit die Rebellen?
It's going to be a recurring theme for all of the armored units going forward.
Yeah, so there is no
Und die hatten auch keinen
full armor left
weißen,
in the
2
game
weiße
anymore.
Würfel,
The
oder?
armor is
Kein
down to
Full
the
Armor
keyword,
mehr.
so every vehicle will have a different numerical
Oh,
armor
krass.
value. And
Das
part of the
krass.
reason that we did this was because vehicles score now, we found through playtests that you could get in situations where there would be one vehicle or maybe multiple vehicles for some of the smaller vehicles that would kind of hang out on points, and it was very, very difficult to
Yeah,
dislodge them.
we want people to be able to interact with them.
And we want people to be able to interact with them. So in the case of the ATRT, that
Ja, das war
means
bei
it
den
went from
ATRT
full
aber
armor
auch
to
echt
armor
immer
2,
Quatsch, dass das Full
but then it got a
Armor
little
war.
bit of a defensive buff
And
with that
the
defense
surge, yes.
Yeah.
And I love the parity this brings, right? The ATRT is the armor 2. The dude on top who's just hanging out, that guy's got a white surgeon.
He's
Yeah.
so
Guck mal,
he's
wie
a
der
rebel with a white
AT-Antwort
surgeon
ist wieder bei
six.
Express
Brings,
schießt.
parity
Die sieht
of
auch richtig
save.
wütend aus, der AT-Fahrer.
Let's go ahead and look at
Ja,
the
die
Rebels'
Scout-Trooper,
best
die gucken so ein
the
bisschen so nach Motto, wo
X-33
haben wir uns
Speeder.
hier darauf eingelassen.
So this lost its transport for one.
Kein
Of course,
Transport.
has armor 2.
Oh, kein Transport mehr.
And these are super awesome mobile weapons
Ja, darauf
platforms now.
Transport,
Like,
ja,
things
I
are
love
incredible.
running all of these things.
Yeah.
They are incredible. Yes, getting to objectives and defeating everything there, destroying everything there is incredible with these guys. These being able to score and being fast and being relatively durable with cover and armor. and the
Ganz
option for
vergessen, dass
cover
ich das
2.
Modell
Well,
gab.
and
Ich
a lot of
keine
their
Ahnung, weil
dice
ich das
pools can
letzte
be
Mal
somewhat
dagegen
smaller
gespielt
stuff,
habe.
but now
Das
they
Modell
can
ist so
change those
gut.
dice
Das
pools
Modell
to
ist so
become
geil.
very
Ich spiele das voll
relevant,
oft.
whereas
Ich habe
before
schon
maybe
immer
you'd
2
have to pool
davon.
all of them together into
Ich
a
liebe das
single
Modell
attack.
auch.
So really enjoy playing with these. Yeah, they're kind of a mobile gun platform now rather than a taxi
Liebe
service
Rebellen.
for operative Luke or whoever.
But now let's talk about transport.
Yeah.
Sagst du jetzt?
AA5.
Das, dann zeigt sie als nächstes Imperium. Dann sagst du, ich liebe
We'll give you a short
Imperium.
version,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
can
So,
go
so
to the full.
once per game, at the beginning of the game, before deploying any units, you just decide if a unit is in the transport, and whenever the transport deploys, that unit deploys from that transport.
A core special forces.
A core special forces.
Ah, okay,
Yes.
also du kannst
So that
nicht
gets
mehr
the unit on the
unendlich
table
lange
in
transportieren,
round
sondern
one, and
wenn
then
der Transporter reinfährt, dann steigt die Truppe
and then you
aus
can't use the transport again.
Okay.
So this is like
Und nicht wieder rein.
another way
und
of
nicht wieder rein.
deploying, special form of deployment.
Kriegst halt deine Truppe dann
And
damit
You get an order in
weiterführen.
round
Yes.
one.
It gives the unit an order so that you
don't
don't
have
mess
to
up the
activate
order.
Ah, und sie kriegt
Yes.
eine Order.
Yeah, the order of activating them.
Und dann hat sie,
I really
wenn
like
sie
my
ausfliegen,
troopers
immer noch
hopping
ihre
under
2
the
Aktionen, weil
gap
sie noch
with
nicht
their
dran
order
war.
ready to go and use the grenade launcher. It's quite fun. And like the other vehicles, the A5 has switched from having full armor to armor 5.
Hammer 5.
And has plenty of customization in terms of what it wants to do with its upgrade cards. All right, let's jump into the Empire rebalance unit.
Oh, Fabian, Empire.
We're going to start off with General
wie
Gears.
alt, was
Yeah,
geil,
so
den
another exemplar.
What?
Yeah, and one of the things we
Exemplar.
tried to do
What?
with these character updates is really
Was
make
zur
like, all right,
ATSD,
we're
lass
gonna
die
pick to do this,
schießen.
like Luke
Was
Skywalker
zur
at this
Hölle?
moment in time. What's the best version of
Drei
that
rote
Luke that we
Würfel.
can
Ich weiß gar nicht, was ich besser
General Gears is a
finde.
great example
Das
of that
Guardians
philosophy, right?
oder
Like,
das
he's known as
Exemplar?
the vehicle guy.
Why
For
not
Empire,
both?
right? He leads the ground assault with Blizzard Force on Echo Base.
Vor allem
So
kann ich ja dann
he's
auch dem
got his
ATSD
vehicle
die
to really
ganzen
cement his spot
Zielmarker
as
geben, die ich
the
selbst
guy in
habe.
Guidance and ATSD
Yeah.
to have it stand by is
Yeah,
incredible.
is great. He's got Spotter and Exemplar to have kind of the same
Guided
economy
Standby
with Leia.
vergeben,
His
voll
range
gut,
attack
ey.
has gotten a little bit better now that he can contribute more. His action economy is freed up a little bit. But keep going to the next guy.
Now let's look at the Imperial Officer. So again, we're going to see similar to the Rebel
Exemplar.
Troop,
Alter, was ist denn
Rebel
das für eine
Officer.
Art?
Exemplar, we have
das
Spot
Artwork ist
one,
richtig
which is kind
geil.
of
Ja,
minimizing
das sieht böse aus.
Kinder.
So moving
Geil.
on to the next one,
Ich
Director
finde auch, dass der Typ, der
Krennic.
blutet,
Krennic
böse
himself
aussieht.
Jetzt geht's
also
aber hier
got,
durch.
quite a few touches and
Spotter 1.
we're not really showing
Du
all
kriegst
of them, but it
Exemplar.
is
Du
important to
kriegst
note that
Exemplar.
the command
Du kriegst
cards
Exemplar.
around these characters were also updated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, bitte
So
mach
if
die
there's
Death
anything
Trooper
specific we
besser.
want to call out on Krennic here, or we just want to jump to Annihilation?
Yeah,
and
he got
Lose?
Exemplar and one of his command cards changed.
Oh, der
Yep.
sieht
Sind sie
So
viel
we're gonna
schneller
go
als
take a
bei
look
den
at
Der
Annihilation
Spotter
and
1
Lose.
von Haus
Das
aus.
ist nur der
Yeah, the
Zeitdruck.
design of the command cards has been
Oh,
changed,
Annihilation.
and we had to change this one because of the change from 6 to
100
5 rounds.
Suppression
The old
Token.
command card did not work.
Was?
So now
3
it's been adjusted
Suppression
to
Token?
rounds. The extra
Jetzt Runde 4 oder
suppression
5.
rounds.
Annihilation looms super fun on bringing them
Hallo,
in.
Todesstern.
It just gives,
Super fun.
it gives both players all the points. It's just
Das ist
everybody
wirklich
has
geiles Artwork.
Ach, Scheiße.
It's
great.
quite fun.
So
Seht ihr, wie
let's
die-
take a look
wie
at
die
the bread and
Short Trooper die
butter
Leute
core unit
verprügeln?
of Imperial armies,
Der
which is
Krennic sieht einfach
Stormtroopers.
cool aus.
Stormtroopers, no real changes except for a points decrease.
Mit dem
Aha,
Teil im
schon
Hintergrund.
verhauen und noch
the
mit weißen
standard
Würfeln im
utility troop
Nahkampf.
of
Die
Empire.
Idioten.
You know, they're
Yeah,
able
those
to
red
do
saves are
everything.
still
Ey,
that
das
doing
ist
they
so
work,
eine
and now
Scheiße.
they're
Wir
even
sind
more
die jetzt
efficient.
schwächer
They
als
also a little bit on
die
their
kosten
melee
sogar mehr
attack,
als Rebellen.
in order
Freuen.
to get that extra efficiency.
Nee.
And so the Empire troops are all about extra efficiency.
I mean, they did get that sweet art.
Die haben schlechteren Angriffswürfel.
That's what they're paying their points for. Look at that.
Ist doch
And then we're going to
egal.
look at the Blizzard Forest Stormtrooper Heavy Response
Finde
unit
ich richtig
card
kacke.
really quick.
Again,
Yes.
Yeah,
cheaper.
same idea.
Gleich
A
geblieben.
little bit cheaper. Their melee attack got degraded a little bit to white dice instead of a black die.
Und die Art ist aber geil.
So now that
Ja,
we've looked at
Artwork
the
ist gut.
baseline core
Ja,
unit
aber
for
warum sind
Empire,
die
let's
denn
take a look at the
schlechter gemacht worden, als ob
Snowtroopers
Sturmtruppen
first
vorher
as
zu
the other
gut
core
waren?
option.
So I
diese
really like these guys. The deployment changes have been really interesting.
Schlagen auch
to
nur noch mit Weiß.
and especially the change to
Ja, auch
the
genervt worden,
objectives
kein
being placed
Buff.
on the center line. They are
Ja,
Das ist-
also ich
to
vergleiche halt
have
gerade mit
steady,
den
but
Rebellen.
because a lot of these
Entschuldigung.
scenarios
Ja,
Die
das
happen,
Rebellen wurden
Imperiums-
alle
das
gebufft.
Imperiums-
kind of
Squad
that
schon die
middle line,
Probleme,
if
sagen wir
you
ruhig.
take a full squad with the flamethrower,
Ja,
that's
ja,
a very good like
die Einheiten
offensive
beim Imperium waren
push
schon
and
immer
take
das,
the
warum die
points
so
unit.
gut
It was a
waren.
lot of
Genau.
fun.
So they can move a little further in round one too.
Yeah.
They can move 2 times, then shoot, which is further than the rest.
Ich sag jetzt schon, die Schneetruppen sind die heimlichen Stars des Imperiums. Sag ich
Ich
schon.
hol kurz den
And
Salzstreuer aus der
talking about
Küche.
their upgrade cards, we'll take a look at the Flame Trooper.
Yeah, so some changes here that are also reflected on
Siehst du,
other
guck dir mal
weapons
die
of similar
Ionenwaffe
types
an, wie gut
across
die
the
ist.
game. There's
Was,
the
wie
flamethrower,
die Ionenwaffe
Trooper, now it's also a melee weapon.
kritisch ein.
Die wird nicht
Ah,
mehr
schon mal getappt.
Die wird nicht mehr getappt.
Okay, das ist in Ordnung. Das ist fair.
Das ist das Imperium, nichts wird gebufft.
Where they no longer exhaust and they gain critical one.
And yeah,
On a lot of
ion is
Ja,
a
und der
little less
Flammenwerfer
punching
ist auch
now
eine
as well.
Nahkampfwaffe.
So you don't
Ja, vielleicht haben sie ja
automatically
von
lose
den
an
Sturmtruppen
action
die
for
Waffen
each
dann auch
ion
besser
token.
gemacht.
Instead,
Dann
you
wär's
roll for
okay.
your ion tokens to see if you're going to lose an action whenever you activate. So we were able to make the ion weapons a lot more generalist and useful in more places.
Okay, also kannst du wieder komplett ionisiert werden.
And then the third core unit,
Meine Druiden
which
freuen
kind of
sich.
fulfills the role of the objective holder, right? Are the shore
Oh, die haben
troopers
Longshot.
as the
Longshot
garrison
ist
force, so you can
natürlich
see all the
verrückt.
stuff here.
Aber nur Speed 1. Wieso ist das denn auch
Yeah,
nur
and much
Speed
like the Rebel
1?
Hallo, hallo
these
Rage
units
4,
are- the
hallo
shore
Rage
troopers are
4.
the, the
Ja, aber sie haben
defensive
Target
archetype,
verloren.
Ja, Exemplar.
Es hat ja nicht jeder in deiner Armee Exemplar und 1000 Spotted-Tokens.
degraded to speed 1.
Also du willst einen Wirs da
But
stehen
they
haben und dann
are
noch
more
1000
about,
Aim-Tokens von
holding
Haus
your
aus,
side
ne?
of the
Du bist mir
battlefield,
einer.
holding your points and kind of interacting via range. So you notice their E22s have got long shot.
That's a very saucy long
Keine
shot.
neuen coolen
Yeah,
Flieger, die
it
auch
is a very
Hitting
tatsächlich
saucy
range
long shot.
4 on your core troopers
Ja, ja,
just
genau.
means that you can gunline pretty hard with these guys.
Notably, they did lose target. So they
Jetzt
had
kam
to get that
Imperium
aim
weg,
token somehow
Ruinen.
through either one of their
Ich meine, jetzt wahrscheinlich zuerst noch Klone.
And they also
Das
gained
Beste
prepared
kommt immer
position,
zum Schluss.
to start
Meine
the
Meinung.
game on the battlefield and kind of dictate.
Das
Nur
kommt dann
17
morgen.
aber nur noch 17 Minuten, die müsst ihr jetzt mal ein bisschen.
All right.
Ja,
Well,
die ziehen
to
das
be
Tempo
fair,
eh
we've
schon
talked
an.
about a lot of very
Ja.
exciting
Ja, okay, jetzt kommt Vader.
but all of it
Jetzt
was
kommt
only for
Vader.
one.
Sagen wir, da haben sie
One
noch nicht
only.
gezeigt, ne?
And that was to make the E-Web range.
Ah, na, E-Web.
You asked, we listened.
Oh, das hat 3 Schritte
Ja,
4.
E-Web Range
That's
4.
very, very
Okay,
impressive.
nice.
That's been done for so long,
Ja,
and
das
all
kann
the
man
chats
spielen.
are always like, E-Web range 1 and I'm like,
Ja, gut.
I can't tell them.
You cannot. That is
Tell them.
that is one of the
That's
things
good.
about doing doing a holistic refresh and doing everything all at once, so it all makes sense with each other.
Range 4,
range-
impact 1,
range
very,
4.
very useful.
Another one that's great on that scenario.
das hat davor
Oh
gar keine
Lord, I forgot the
Wucht,
name of
There's
it.
the singles.
The bunker
No,
assault.
the
Nee.
L. The
It's,
L.
it's good in a lot of
Richtigen
scenarios.
It is good in a
It's
lot
good
of
in a lot.
scenarios.
It's good in a
But
lot,
putting it
yeah.
in the center and then just being like, which side are you going to come in
Yeah,
on? I'm going
covering
to
the
shoot you either
objectives,
way.
yeah.
Deal with it. So the E-Web
With
finally
prepared position.
getting the
Yeah.
range it always deserved. And then let's go into the Dark Troopers.
Which is
So-
just an armor thing.
Boah, diese
Yeah,
Art.
they've been
Yeah.
reduced to armor 3 from
Ach,
armor
wir haben
5.
nur Armor
Also
3.
very
Das
strong.
ist
Armor 3, das ist
recht.
okay.
Okay, fair.
Increase
fair.
the interactivity
Aber
of the
ankonzentriert.
Was?
Yeah.
a little bit.
It doesn't
Also
necessarily
kriegen wir noch
punch
keine
as
Deckung.
heavily if you don't have a lot of impact.
Ich wollte gerade sagen,
with
ist doch jetzt
yours,
Schmutz, oder?
For sure. And overall, just a strong
Fabian?
change, I think, for keeping this unit close to its
Was?
original
Ist
design,
doch
but
so.
a lot more interesting.
Aufgenervt worden. Also ich
Like,
zähle mir
very
jetzt, das ist
dominant.
Spaß.
Getting to activate twice is a hell of a drug.
Let's
Ja?
goodness.
Naja.
All right. Let's take a look
Naja,
at the
stecken wir
TX-225 occupier tank. This one has a couple of changes as well.
Yeah, so like
liebe
all
ihn.
the other vehicles,
geil.
it's gone from
Das
just
ist
armor to
Armor 5, ja, Armor 5 ist halt
transport
schon
has been
viel,
slightly
ne?
reworked. I think now's a good time to bring up
Sonst ist alles
that,
gleich, oder?
notch-based movement on vehicles has been changed a little bit,
Okay.
and that now you get a free pivot, 90-degree pivot.
Right, at the
when you
beginning
start
of
Du
your
your
movement.
bekommst
Free
ein
pivot, so
gratis
with free
Pivot,
pivot,
wenn du
they're
einen
able to
Notch
get-
Space
make
hast. Also
2
du kannst
pivots.
dich einmal frei drehen. Das ist natürlich saugeil.
Yeah, and so it opens up flexibility a
Yeah.
little bit.
So
and
So
it makes it
that lets
easier
these
for the
longer
battlefield.
bases maneuver around. You can maneuver around round buildings. Yeah, I love playing these longer vehicles, and they are much more user friendly now.
Next up,
We have
we've
the
got
ATST.
TSD. It's got some new awesome art, but the
Er
only
hat
change
nichts
here is
kaputt
going to
geschossen.
armor 5.
Getting a little cheaper.
No, don't you undersell this art. That's the change.
You know how much I love ATSTs? I made a battle force so you could have 3 of them. That's how much I like them.
Das wusste man, dass du 3 Ideen spielen kannst.
Speaking of that battle force,
Speaking of
Major
that battle
Fun,
force,
also
Segway.
only real change here, armor 5.
Yeah, these things are quite efficient for their
Auf Rüstung
shooting.
kann man sich
Okay.
verlassen.
With the points.
Zu viele Keywörter für eine Karte.
And last but not least in the Empire, we have the Lat Patrol Transport.
Just changes here to that full armor going to armor 5. Transport was tweaked, and the
bessere
laser cannon's got a
Angriffswürfel.
little bit of an offensive boost. due to
Zwei
transport.
Shades.
Also
Hashtag double ordnance.
double ordnance.
Double missile, double happy.
Zwei
So you get to
Shells, ja.
fire with your
Voll
arsenal
gut.
2 every round with the cycling ammunition. It's very, very fun play pattern.
Right.
All right,
Keine
so we're
Perlenspaß,
finished
keine
with our look
Perlenspaß.
at the rebalances for the Empire. We're
Oh,
gonna
kein
talk
Vader,
about
Fabian.
Now, the Galactic Republic, I think it's really important to
Klar, natürlich Separatisten
discuss
sind wieder das Letzte.
that you're going to
meiste.
see quite a few changes here.
Ja, das
And just in terms of the approach to the faction, adjusting for fire support and all these other things, making sure that the Galactic Republic had room to be able to expand, to function within the new game system, to not be oppressive, but also to maintain its faction identity and be interesting. So one of those big things is that exemplar. You're not going to see that on our next card, which is Padme Amidala. You want to give a quick kind of recap as to how things have adjusted around the fact that this faction really doesn't need exemplar to be able to do what it does. Because everyone has exemplar.
Yeah, pretty much the clone trooper rule has become.
Die hat ihren Willen zu Exemplern verloren.
Whenever you add tokens to a clone trooper, they can share them at range 2 now. So it's almost like they all have it. Yes.
Das war gut. Ich bin innerlich gerade umgefallen.
They don't need it. That also does a couple things. One, it lets
Also
them be a
ich
lot
möchte
more
nur noch mal
active,
hinweisen,
right?
Imperium
They're
tot.
not making tokens, they're not doing those kind of things. And
Unspielbar.
this has significant updates.
Schickt dir einen Kilo Salz.
Padme
Was ist denn
moves
los
around a lot
mit
with agile and
dir? Padme ist
nimble,
unspielbar. Guck dir
generating
das mal
dodge
lieber
tokens
an.
and incentivizing you to move basically.
Ja, aber die hat
So
Nimble,
the
voll
operatives
gut.
and the commanders
Ja,
inside
die
of
ist halt richtiger
Galactic Republic
Kampfcharakter,
are now
ne?
much more active
Die
combatants
hat ja so richtig viel
rather
Pierce auf
than
ihrer Waffe.
hanging out making tokens.
Ja,
Hat
aber
die
die-
vorher 60 Punkte
And that led us
gekostet
to
oder
the theme
weniger?
of
90.
Galactic Republic being the clones
Ja,
supporting
siehst du,
the
dann
clones.
ist ja auch günstig.
Ja,
Also 60 Punkte ist ja auch
That was
nichts,
kind of what
oder?
we were going for.
Das stimmt.
Und die hat ja immer noch ihre Karte, mit der sie Siegpunkte machen kann.
Helping each other and
Die
not
Secret Mission,
necessarily,
ja, hat sie einmal.
Ja.
these things. Now, obviously, like your clone commanders and stuff, they're going to get all sorts of.
Hatte sie
things
vorher
that are not
Agile
exemplar
1?
because
Nein.
they basically
Ich mag
have
das
exemplar.
Artwork aber richtig gerne. Ne?
Ja, das
Yeah,
fand
let's go ahead and take a look at Diplomatic Cover, which is an updated Padme Amidala command card.
Yeah, so it's still granting infiltrate with the divulge, and if you've divulged it, grant secret mission.
Inspire 1.
She's very good at getting across the table and scoring. Get you that extra victory point now. If you don't need her to stand back and support the clones, right? So she's got a little bit of a split play style that this card kind of describes.
Ja, gut, aber da wirst du die doch
And
mal in
then
der ersten Runde spielen,
Probably
die
the
Karte,
most
damit du
iconic
infiltrieren
member
kannst
of
und
the
den
Galactic
Effekt
Republic,
hast,
Anakin
oder?
Skywalker,
willst Secret
effectively a
Mission.
complete rebuild.
Yes.
In almost
Whoa.
every way, just looking at what the character, how the character was, what
Okay.
he needed to do to be useful in the
Fickpenfälle
faction
ist
to kind of
das?
fulfill the Anakin Skywalker dream. A lot of
Der
changes here.
Auserwählte.
So he starts off very aggressive. Starting in round 1, you can immediately start moving him
Der ist ja
towards,
nicht mehr
towards the
flawed.
enemy forces to dive in.
Hier bitte
He's
alles.
a maximum
Keyword
aggression
alles.
Jedi.
I
then
don't think we're going to go through it, but the Timtic keyword is definitely something everybody should go read because
Yep.
it is completely different.
very
now.
different.
Completely
it
changed.
is.
And in addition to being completely changed, his command cards have entirely been updated and rebalanced as well to reflect
kleines
the Anakin
Okay, also
Skywalker
also
as the
kompletter
general of
Rework
the
von
Republic,
Anakin,
so if you wanna
komplettes
dive into
Rework.
those. Important to note, there's no flaw card here because he no longer has a flaw card.
Stimmt.
Was
So that's been
Zufall.
clearly
Was, zwei
removed
Attack
from his
Engines?
overall kit, as we felt like it was more of a
zusätzliche
negative than
weiße
a positive in
Attackwürfel.
terms of what it was adding to this character and the fantasy
zur
of being
Hölle
able
ist
to put
das
him in your
denn?
army and play with him.
Aber
So this is where the fun begins.
David Assage,
Giving Anakin prepared position, and a free action jump just really
Was
gets him
zur
across the table.
verfickten Hölle
wie
sehe
So
ich
swinging
gerade?
him at your enemy is,
Action Jump.
is a very,
Wer hat den
a very
denn
good playstyle
Steroide
for him.
gedrückt?
You underestimate my
Wir haben
power,
nur noch
gets
10
extra
Minuten, die
hitting
schaffen
power
die
versus
Leben noch
already
die
activated
drücken.
units. And General Skywalker gives him and his army aim tokens. So he's just really all about punching you directly. in
He's
the
very
face.
aggressive.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, the man who taught him everything he clearly didn't learn, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Is very not about punching you
Yeah,
in the
definitely
face.
the most offensive, right? He Ceresu Mastery gives him rerolls versus
Was?
on his defense die versus range attacks.
Yeah, so that's been updated.
Rezo gibt dir
Let's
Rerolls?
talk about deflect here.
Reroll.
So deflect.
Ich sag euch ganz
is
ehrlich,
always
wenn die
active. You
Grieves
don't have
nicht
to pay
geändert haben, werde ich hier mein
you don't have to
Netto
spend a
übrig.
die
Das
Deflect
reißt
ist
den
immer
komplett
an.
auseinander.
Totally active.
Ja,
And you
vielleicht
always
ist er
have searchable.
und sie haben ihn nicht geändert, dann ist er
So,
wenigstens nicht schlechter geworden.
That is
Na klar.
makes it so
Hallo,
the
Deflect ist immer
Jedi can move
Was?
around quite freely, especially Obi-Wan.
Deflect ist
And,
immer an. Du kannst immer konvertieren.
In exchange for being always
Oh
on,
Gott,
Deflect can
verdammt.
only do 1 wound back if he rolls 1 surge.
Übrigens, wer hier in den Discord-Gruppen
Immer
schreibt, das
Deflect
Artwork
ist
ist
gut.
nicht
You
gut.
can also
Wie
use the
kann man dieses
reroll
Artwork
on
nicht gut
Guardian
finden?
by paying a dodge token.
Kann ihn jemand von Discord rausschmeißen?
Spicy.
Alle.
He's here for his homies.
All right, so exciting stuff with the characters. Now let's talk about the core options for Galactic Republic. Tony, if you want to come back to us for a second before we jump to the card, so we can kind of set things up for what people are going to see. One of the big things as we were looking at the Galactic Republic, right? We've talked a little bit in other podcasts and interviews about faction identity, the idea that the Galactic Republic is the elite army. They have the best training, they have the best equipment, but they're not very numerous, right? They are specialists and designed to be the best of the best. When looking at the core options between Phase 1 and Phase 2, what we really saw was not a lot of difference, right? And where we went through our different iterations was to say, let's get rid of the idea that Phase 1 and Phase 2 is the difference between a clone. And instead, let's create a clone trooper infantry unit that effectively is the most customizable unit it can be. And this led to a brand new upgrade, which we'll talk about, and you'll see on the card that only the clone trooper infantry units, the clone troopers in general, get to take, or you'll see in the Galactic Republic so far. And this leads to basically a one-core choice that is flexible and customizable in a way that allows it to fill all the different roles that you've seen through the other factions. Now, don't despair if you're like, I don't just want to see one clone trooper unit, I want others. If you watch the roadmap tomorrow, we're going to be showing off one of the new core units that's coming to Galactic Republic.
Oh, Galactic Republic
that also
core
has
unit
exciting
morgen.
options and opportunities to everything. But the overall design goal and where we landed with this change and this rebalance, I think really did hit the idea that the clones can be customized and they are trained enough to fill any battlefield role they need to, and they have access to that equipment to do it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the card. So clone trooper infantry.
They get, they effectively get a lot of the
Okay,
roles
kein
that
Fall,
the
das haben sie
Phase 2
gesagt,
clones
ja,
are
alles
getting.
klar.
Nur ein
For a
Upgrade
slightly cheaper
Ding, ne?
price tag.
Und das ist das für die
removal
großen
of
Squads oben
firepower
links.
support. So they're
Nee, das
very,
ist das Neue, was nur Klone haben.
core unit for
Weißt du, die ersten Druiden, die ich sehe, sind wie zwei
which is
Druiden
that
in
courage
Stücke
too,
geschossen
and
vom
that
Klonen
reliable
liegen.
for
Das, was du
token
verdient
sharing and
hast.
keeping the whole army going and supporting each other.
Schnauze da
Yes, once again,
drüben.
the theme is the clones.
Wir
have the
hatten eben
clones.
schon auf der Kartendesign
gives you that
diese
sense of-
If you look at that
Weapon
upgrade
Boys.
bar to the left, yeah, that is the
Das ist
leader,
aber keine Separatist.
heavy weapon,
Im Chat fragt
personnel,
jemand, wie man an die-
training, gear, and grenade.
Im Chat fragt jemand, wie man an die Änderungen kommt.
Die werden
ja schon
hochgeladen.
Also in
And so let's
6
take a look at
Minuten
what
sollen die
that
Änderungen
upgrade
hochgeladen
looks
werden.
like
Kannst du
with
dann
our boy
runterladen
from the
und
212
ausdrucken.
Boyle, or
Kriegst also alles
Medic Tony.
umsonst.
Wow, why would you do that to me?
Yes,
Come on,
I'm
man!
so well.
Come on! That's just cold-blooded.
So
That's cold-blooded. Jeez,
medics-
I
the
can
medics
make
got
my
some
own
ice for
mistakes, thank you. I don't need you to engineer ones for me.
I appreciate you, Tony.
So Boyle is just one example of these leader
squad
upgrades.
leader.
There's a whole bunch of these, right? I mean, I'm not going to list them because I'll get one wrong, and that'll be amazing.
Well, and you
But
can see
there's a
them in the
bunch.
document here. once
One
we
example of
finish
a way
chatting.
you can customize a unit is adding Boyle and a clone medic
Yeah.
to a unit of clone
Okay.
troopers so that they can guardian for another unit and heal back wounds, so that to
kannst
be a real
Boyle,
defensive
Medic,
powerhouse guardian type
Waffe.
unit.
So Tony, show us the next card, please. Thank you. So now is the time. Yes, perfect. Beautiful.
That's the clone medic.
Aber das ist
That's
wie
the
man
guy.
kennt, so wie man
That's,
kennt,
that's
ja.
the guy. So yeah, between the personnel slot, between
Also
the
halt-
leader
ja,
slot,
es
and
halt
between the heavy
andere
weapon slot,
Slots,
you
ja.
get to pick what kind of weapon you want to be using. You get to
Right.
pick what kind of personnel you want to be using. Do you want a large squad of
Ah,
guys?
das
Do
ist
you
doch
want
jetzt
a
derselbe
unit?
Slot.
Do you want a
Do you
medic?
want
Ja,
a
es ist
medic?
selbst-
Do you want comms? Do you want
And
to
you
use
get
other
that
different
training slot
specialists,
at
right?
56 points, so
Yep.
you get that as well for another level of customization.
And you get an equipment slot, and you can take a grenade slot. We're going to talk about grenades in a little bit, and they're very exciting now. And then you get this leader slot, which is really, the leader slot to me is very exciting because it's usually very powerful, but is kind of on those unique characters. Not all of them, but it is on a lot of the named characters. So
Yeah, it really adds that personality and that flavor that we've seen over and over throughout the Clone Wars animated series and in all the other media about the clones, who they are, how they function within the Galactic Republic, like armed
This
forces.
is Boyle's
and
unit
everything
of
else.
clone or Five's units of
Yep.
leader of
And once you
clones.
put multiples of those on the table, you really start to get that Galactic Republic feel that I think dials into that identity of what they are and what they mean and everything else. And again, all of this allowed the characters to become more characterful, to become less about just being token batteries necessarily for the army, which sometimes they got locked into, and instead to be able to do all the cool things that we see them do on the screen, right? Reliving that fantasy and that epicness that we see in all the media.
Speaking about cool things,
Arc Troopers also got a decent sized update here.
So they got a
Arc-Truppler
roll
mit
shift
Charge.
to be
Yep.
more aggressive,
Nur noch Range 2.
closer range unit.
Nur noch
They
Range
also
2,
range
okay,
3.
krass.
They gain
Die können ihre
charge.
Pistolen aber auch im
So,
Nahkampf benutzen.
charge plus tactical one is crazy. You get to move twice,
Ja, mit
then
dem
attack with 2 aim tokens.
Jo, mit seiner
And
Zweier.
how many dice do those hand blasters roll?
Wie viele Upgrades können die haben,
Two
bitte?
per arc trooper. So rolling 8
Bin ich
dice
jetzt auch
with
alle
2 aim
im
tokens is a very, very deadly pool.
Nee.
And sharpshooter, of course, there as well.
Yeah.
And these guys also have leader slot.
They also got a little less expensive, so you can use them for
können die
before
auch
they have a
6 Mann
counter
werden.
charge or a charge available. They can move around into position and
Ja.
generate those aim tokens and share them with the army. It's kind of a really fun support role for them.
And Scout 2 really gets them into places that
Right.
they have no business being in round 1.
Yep.
ATRT, nothing too significant here outside of the Armor 2 change.
Okay, ein AAT zerlegt hat. finde ich.
Those
Ja,
red, defense die
Yep.
now.
So
Gute
That's what
Verteidigungswürfe.
clones
because
have.
that's what clones
The
wear.
guy on the top is a clone.
Yes, he is.
Oh ja,
Clone
krass.
armor.
Wir wissen alle Male, die Druiden
Let's talk
werden
about
jetzt
the
gesprochen.
Saber Tank. The
Also
Saber
Also
Tank
hat der
has a couple of
AT-RT
different,
nur
changes
eine
that
Armor
define
weniger
its role,
als die
make it,
Dark Trooper,
more
Ja.
flexible
kriegt
in terms
aber
of army construction and everything
Deckung
else.
Yeah. Again, we made these main battle tanks hit a little harder. This one gets surge to hit.
und hat
and
den
gets
gleichen
the
Save.
second ordnance slot, so that you can have
mean,
those more
Fahrzeuge kriegen keine
customizable
Deckung.
ammo
Guck mal, der
options.
Surge zu Hit.
And
Just real quick,
ja,
we're
das
able-
ist
fire support is still in the game, even though it's not on the clone trooper units, but it does have a different effect. And part of that change is that now we can give certain Republic units surge to hit, surge to crit,
Right.
where we wouldn't be able to necessarily do that before because of the interaction between fire support and the clone trooper units.
Kein Fire Support mehr bei
all right,
Klonen.
so let's dive into the final look.
Ne, es soll einen
of
anderen
the
Effekt
faction.
haben, haben sie doch
Ja.
gerade gesagt.
Last but certainly not least, the Separatist Alliance.
Druiden!
Card rebalances. So we're going to start with the
Du
Ja,
kriegst
das ist doch
Exemplar.
mal-
Du kriegst
Again, you're gonna see the
Exemplar. Du kriegst
exemplar
Exemplar.
come up a bit.
this is kind of your
Exemplar,
minimum
man.
commander. He's a,
Baby, das ist, was
the
ich wollte.
T-Series
Das
is a
ist
little
mein
more expensive
Stand
because
of
you get the
Superiority
direct
hier.
core droid trooper that kind of gets that B1 order chain
Padme
going.
Anakin, fickt euch. Ihr
And then
kriegt
we'll
alle
move on to the
Exemplar.
upgraded version of the T-Series, the Super Tactical
He
Droid.
gains an eye.
So
He
that
does. That makes him more tactical
Yeah.
because he can see more.
That's the tactical eye.
That's the
Okay,
super
auch der ganz normale taktische
gets you a lot
Exemplar,
for
alles
these
klar.
15 points. You get more
Exemplar, der
durability
schießt besser.
with the red
Ja, schießt
defense
besser, ja.
dice, the 5 wounds. You get upgraded to strategize to get dodge and aim tokens, and you
Die
get
ganzen
a lot
Druidenhelden
more
stehen alle wie
lethal
Napoleon auf so
weapons.
Ölgemälden.
And then, of course, the two named Super Tacs.
Yep.
We're going to start with Kraken, who's the punchy fella.
Yeah.
Like all
He's
the
got a heavy
like the normal one, he gets exemplar.
Like the normal one, he
And
gets
you will
Exemplar.
wreck
Hier
you
bitte.
immediately with that overwhelm. Yeah,
Ja, nochmal Scharfschütze
He's
1.
very, very strong
Ja, stimmt.
combat.
Und er hat auch
rote
Javiers mehr.
Aber drei rote Würfel schießen.
Also the exemplar.
Do we want to talk about AI and what changed with
I think
that?
we're going to talk
Yes.
about AI when we get to B1s.
Ah, are they next?
They are
No.
next.
Oh.
We
Oh,
got a
okay.
couple more characters
Okay.
to go through.
I'll calm
But
down.
you brought it
Keep
up,
me
so let's talk
comfortable.
about AI.
We can talk about it.
What a
Who,
transition.
who needs a script when you've got a Pagani just throwing things out and a Tony skipping slides?
AI only triggers. So you have to make a force action with AI if you're not ordered, or if you're within range 3 of a commander, you can ignore AI as
Was?
well.
Was?
So
Ich kann
if you're,
AI-Intelligenz innerhalb von
it gives a
treiben?
lot more flexibility on how you organize your force.
Wer braucht der
And you can still
Einstruiden?
do
Wie
the
geil
order
ist das
chains
denn?
and order control. B1s have not been changed. But
Oh, there's a lot more of them now. 112, I believe you said?
112. But they're using other options is a lot more, a lot easier now because of the AI change.
Yeah, the units with AI are no longer punished as harshly by not receiving orders, which the B1s always kind of got for
Druidikas.
free,
Right.
Is kind of what we were trying to address with that. So now you're
Ja,
more
meine
incentivized.
Druiden
to
werden
take
allmächtig
orders.
sein.
It's
Maybe-
easier
maybe
to take
not
other-
more incentivized, it's less disincentivized, that's a word.
Penalized.
Penalized. Disincentivized.
Jetzt müssen
For
nur noch
taking those
Grievous
units
gut werden.
because
Schon ist
of
alles in
AI on
Ordnung.
those units.
Ja,
But it
dann
also gives
werde
them
ich hier
fun
gleich
counterplay
weinen.
where they can sort of snipe out or scalpel out these tactical droids and the T-Series droids to put
Droid
that AI
Trooper
back.
sind nur
And
noch
now you're
Speed
forced to
1.
and you get that kind of-
Fabian.
Oh,
So protecting your
ganz
commander
ehrlich,
is
warum
much
haben
more
wir dich
important,
dabei? Du bist.
well as opening up.
Ich hab noch nicht mal alle Karten gesehen.
Let's look at the one and only Count Dooku,
Who does not have AI?
who does not have a no.
Direct.
He's a
Direct.
command.
Der hat
Ja,
Würfel auf dem
so,
Bildschirm.
Dooku's
Und der hat
got
einen
some
Convert. Der hat Convert in der Verteidigung.
Ja, Verteidigungskonvert.
And
Richtig cool.
native search to block, so
165
that works
Punkte.
in melee as well, which makes him even more
Läuft.
dominant versus the Jedi.
euch,
that
ihr
he can fight.
beschissenen Jedi.
So it's you can just put this guy wherever you want, basically, because he's so durable.
He's a bully for sure.
Right. So that's why he didn't get any sort of like, movement rules, because he doesn't really need them. He can just stand and take over the area where he's at.
Yeah, he also got that direct trooper unit to kind of give a little bit of flavor. He is, in name at least, the leader of the Separatists, and so he's very that like, okay, I'm gonna scheme and like I'm gonna have these plans within plans, but then when I have to get my hands dirty, I'm more than capable of doing so.
We're going to take a look at General Grievous next, who another one who kind of got a bit of a blow up here.
He got immune to Pierce, so that he can
Pierce,
fight
okay,
Jedi
yeah.
without them Pierce,
Yeah.
without Pierce.
Entourage,
Entourage IG 100 actually
Entourage.
it was my favorite addition to his
Vier
rule set,
Magna
'cause
Garden.
now you get to live that fantasy of he's always got his little bodyguard with him.
Yeah, and it's a very effective combo.
130
He is
Punkte.
very good
Hat
in
kritisch auf
melee
all
as well
seine
with
Waffen, wer
his
jetzt auch nachkommt.
Nine-Guard attendants. So, and losing Arsenal, having his Annihilator move to the card, having both of his lightsabers
Aber ich
move
hoffe,
to one
Vader wurde
profile
auch so
means we
stark
could
gebufft
make
wie
him
der
a little
Rest.
better by
Er
giving
hat
him
auch einen
level one.
Gear-Slot.
It also simplifies it a bit as well.
Right.
Let's go ahead and take a look at his Supreme Commander command card, which got a little bit of a update.
Yeah, so we wanted to see General Grievous ordering the
Unbarmherzig.
droids in his army a little more.
Ja, aber wer
And
möchte
this
nicht
what this does,
irgendwelche
it allows him
Druiden
to
an dieses Kammer
really
wählen
spread
können?
out surge tokens, and that ruthless makes it
oder
so you can
Geonesianer, die sich
move
500.000
your
Mal
droid
bewegen.
troopers, your core
Ja.
droid troopers.
Der Grün sieht angepisst aus. Das ist im Endeffekt das perfekte Beispiel für
in
gehobenes
exchange for one
Management.
of them getting defeated,
Search
which
Token.
because of their numbers,
There's only 112 of them, Ben.
right, is actually a very, very strong buff. So him being a ruthless general is what we see here.
Let's talk about B1
Das
battle
sieht alles
droids,
so
although
wild.
we've already talked about the AI changes, but here are the B1s.
Die Art.
Nabu
So with their
brennt.
squad upgrade, they made there's no changes to B1 battle droids, except that they can, as a personnel slot, get another 7
Cool, die
B1 battle
schießen.
droids for
Und schlagen genauso gut zu wie
38
Sturmtruppen.
points. And then
Die
you add
haben
heavy weapon to
kein
that, you get
Konzept.
14, and then Separatist Invasion, you
Das
can
stimmt.
take 8 units of them
Und sind
for
mehr.
112.
Look, man, all I'm
total
saying is
B1s.
my snowtroopers eat good against that.
That's
they eat
true.
very good against that.
Und schnell
Those guys
als
super do not want to see a
Shorttrooper.
flamethrower.
I was surprised you didn't get carpal tunnel with how many B1s you were removing from the table. Each activation, it was impressive.
Yeah, we
watching
played
that
it
game.
enough to where we'll see how good it is. It doesn't seem like it's like gonna skew out the game as much as we initially predicted. So we went ahead with it.
All right, let's take
I'm
a look
excited.
at the
Yeah.
B2 battle droids who did get a couple changes in the rebalance.
Yeah, so part of Reed.
Was? Die haben einen roten Verteidigungswürfel?
Right, so you've got
Swiss
these ones
Rockets,
which
look
are
out
good
for the
forward,
Swiss Rockets.
quality
Und zwei
of its
schwarze
own, like you
anstatt
can't attack
schwarz-weiß?
all of them or get rid of all of them, but they're not very effective. And individually as units, and now you've got the B2s where these guys are more durable, they hit harder, they no longer have armor, instead now just have a red defensive die. They also got an upgrade to their arm cannons, which are now melee weapons, and they got the wrist rockets so that you can watch those wrist rockets
nehm
shoot
das.
opponents.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And they have a short range
Die kann man doch
anti-vehicle
bestimmt
option,
auch
just kind of
größer
give them the
spielen.
role of
With the
Ich wollte
red
gerade sagen,
defensive
ich
die,
will
they're
dich halt
very,
einfach
very,
für
very
mit
durable.
Sieben
They
B2
can-
Weiß.
They're very aggressive
Ja.
to things that are near them. So,
Weißt du, ihr
they
seid,
can take
ihr seid halt viel gehypt dafür, Rebellen und Druiden und alles Mögliche gewesen und Imperium
Geil.
halt wirklich nicht. Es ist halt
Also warte,
wirklich,
du willst mir sagen, ich habe 7 B1, 7 B2,
Let's go ahead and take a
das
look
sind,
at the BX
das sind
series
15
Commandos.
Würfel.
Die
Was,
haben
die haben
Jump.
Jump?
Those are jumpier now. They
Yay,
got the
jump.
jump roll,
Hüpf,
which
hüpf, 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 hüpf.
with their scout moves, with the jump roll, with scale, they're able to move around and get into interesting places
okay.
on the
Druiden sind die
battlefield with a kind of flexible AI roll.
Ja, so Leute, ihr könnt euch an einem anschlecken, Druiden sind die besten.
I take it.
Warum haben die,
Okay.
warum
They
hüpfen die?
can get to those positions that you really don't
Ey, in der
want.
Serie springen die auch überall rum.
or that you can't get
Phenomenal in
with
bunker
your
assault.
that you can't get to with maybe your B2s or your B1s, right?
Right.
That jump one opens up a lot of movement flexibility.
Bunker assault, especially,
So,
you really get to live
equipping
yeah,
with the
near
vibro
those,
swords as well is also really cool now.
going in and blowing stuff up. And then
ja,
last
Nahkampf
but
BX
not
hört sich
least,
gut an mit
we're
Scout
gonna look
und
at the
Jump und
AAT
allem möglichen
battle
Kram.
Boah, die Art.
So the
Wow.
AAT got a
Alter.
surge to hit.
Yeah, we have
Das
one.
ist mal Filusha.
Yep.
You can make your own mistakes.
And
right.
got
Average ist
Man, I will
richtig
make my
gut,
own
oder?
mistakes, thank you. Hat er Hit-Convert gekriegt.
so
ne?
again, this is like
Und
these,
Wucht
Ja, so wie es sein
these,
muss.
big battle tanks.
Jetzt, wo die
got a
Druiden
little
Fire
more
Support
efficient
verloren
at
haben,
putting on the
ist das auch gut
firepower
so.
with the surge to hit here.
And double
Barrage
Double
mit
ordnance.
hier
This guy already had
roten
double
Würfeln mit
ordnance. This is
Critical,
the-
This is what
Impact
taught us
This is
about
what
double
taught us
ordinance
about
is
double
more
I don't
fun.
care.
Convert.
Double
Einmal
ordinance.
But he does have the double
auf
ordnance, which I
Range
love.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah. He still has it. That's important to note. It didn't change.
Yeah.
'Cause that's Barrage the klingt trend. potenziell auch stark
Okay.
in die neue Deckung.
The Persuader, the not last card.
Well, it's not the last card, but it is the last card here. Double ordnance again, Ben.
Yeah,
Just to
I
be
love the
clear.
double ordnance here
Just to
because
be
you
clear.
kind of mix and match. Like the ion cannons are better with some of the ordnance, and the heavy blasters are better with some of the ordnance. So you can kind of like 2 and 2, turn from turn, and just kind of mix and match here. Which is, I love the Persuader tank. It is, I just love transporting B2s
That's so
or
einfach
Magna Guard
günstig.
of the field with it now.
Ja, 130 Punkte ist
And
billig.
getting those double ordnance slots.
Ja,
makes
aber
it,
11 Lebenspunkte ist
play
auch schon
very,
viel,
very fun.
ne?
Das schon immer.
All right, and then the last card that we're going to look at, well, we're done with all the faction updates. We're just going to look at one upgrade card. And this is to
Impact
kind of
grenades,
discuss
Impact 4.
grenades in
Okay,
general
alles klar.
and show you,
Was?
the
Im-
changed impact grenade.
Im
Yeah, so
Nahkampf.
grenades have been changed to it's no longer just a weapon that any miniature in the unit can contribute to the attack pool. Now, one miniature in the unit can add
okay.
a grenade to the attack pool. And we're showing the impact grenade because it came about because, as we talked about earlier, we wanted players to be able to interact with vehicles more, especially now that one or multiple they can score. You can have one or maybe more than one vehicle standing on point. And we wanted players to have an option to, dislodge those vehicles, interact with them. So now you have impact grenades. So one miniature in the unit can add the impact grenade to the attack pool to add 1 black die, and
adds
impact 4
to the whole pool.
to the whole
Right.
pool. A lot of the grenades also have had their range change from range 1 to also be melee weapons as well. So you can give it a little bit of an offensive boost in melee.
Sounds less than ideal.
Hier, da könnte er Sturmtruppen
versus a tank,
Granaten
it's
mitnehmen,
fine.
haben die auch
Oh,
so
okay.
wieder.
No.
That's how you use
Ja
grenades.
gut, aber
You
dann
put it
kann ich ja nur eine werfen. Das ist ein schwarzer
Pop the
Würfel.
hatch, throw
Toll.
it in. Done.
Da hast du dein
All
Update.
done. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our new battle order panel. We only went 10
fuck.
minutes over, so we didn't need the
Krass.
extra 30 minutes they gave
Ich glaube,
us.
ich bin gerade komplett
Just-
ausgebrannt. Ich weiß nicht, was die hier gerade mit mir
Krass.
We can
gemacht
have
haben.
20 of it back, depending on how long this
Krass.
outro takes. I mean, we could mount
We
it
could
for
We
go.
could go forever.
all it's
We
worth. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We hope you are absolutely as excited as we are to finally get this into your hands, to start playing games with it, to start exploring all of the new opportunities and
Sure, that's
options
on.
these rebalance cards
Ja,
are
ist
bringing,
online.
the brand new battle deck is bringing,
Echt?
and of course the new core rules are offering with their
Ja,
Ja,
changes and
wahrscheinlich auf
updates.
0 Uhr
Vor 2
geteilt.
Minuten.
Again,
Und
all
mit
of
einem
those
mega
documents
geilen
are
Fotos
available
von
right
den
now on
Riot Troopern und dem
atomicmassgames.com.
Sleeper Set.
Just click on the Legion section, go to the rules, and you can get all of it.
Read our
and
article
start,
if you want more
start playing.
analysis.
If
There's
you
also
want,
an article.
There's also an
Highly
if you want
suggest the article.
way more analysis and detail into the thought process behind the change, some of the math, and some of the changes we didn't really even touch on, go ahead and dive into that as well. It's going to be there for you as well. We can't wait to see how everybody interacts and how this
Das
changes
lädt jetzt
all the
natürlich
games
nicht, weil
and
jetzt
everything
alle
else. Be sure
Millionen
to join
Spieler
us
von Legion
tomorrow
Allergeistes
for the
drauf
Kann ich
Legion
mir
roadmap,
vorstellen.
where we'll be
Sie aber nur
showing
den
off all of the
Artikel,
new
nicht
stuff that's coming out over the next
die
12 months.
Ressourcen.
And taking a look
Sehen konnte
at,
ich noch nichts, weil ich da
some
noch
exciting
nicht
new things.
durchschlagen konnte.
Du bist wie...
Ich wollte gerade sagen,
You're just doing
die
this? You're doing this?
AMG
All right.
tot.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Be sure to tune in next. Dallas Kemp is going to be painting some Legion stuff. No, he's going to be painting some terrain, I believe. So check out that as well.
Die Seite
Bye.
geht nicht mehr.
wollen wir
Die
die
Seite
Namen
stürzt
mal?
ab. Um Gottes Willen.
Krasser Scheiß.
Jeez. Der ist
Krasser Scheiß.
Leute, Witzka, Leute. Das war...
Oh, ich kann Raja Reference. Was will ich denn runterladen? Download PDF Core Rulebook.
Alles.
Take it, win it.
oh Mann.
Ich hab's.
Okay, Leute, ich hoffe, ihr seid alle so geflasht, wie wir das sind.
So, ja, in meinen Chat reingucken. Da sind.
Krieg keiner ich.
Wenn jetzt einmal Finn, tust du mir eingefallen.
Nein.
Nur heute einmal. Ich habe Geburtstag.
Wenn du jetzt irgendwas fragst, wenn du...
Hast du nicht? Ich weiß, wann du Geburtstag hast.
Ja, ist doch egal. Kannst du einmal eine Umfrage machen? Welche Fraktion hat die besten Buffs bekommen? und dann logischerweise die 4 Fraktionen reinsetzen.
Na gut.
Man muss ja nicht fragen, nach Separatisten, Punkt. Da brauchen wir gar nicht drüber zu
Ist so.
diskutieren.
Wir haben immerhin 28 Zuschauer. Ist Tabletop Admiral so schon aktualisiert, ist die Frage jetzt.
Klar.
Willst du mich verarschen? Natürlich, habe ich das jetzt schon aktualisiert.
Nein, wie es ist immer noch, wie es ist. 3
Star
weiße
Wars
Angriffsschiffe.
Legion Refresh Deep Dive. Ach Gott, die Rebels, die Bestseller. Ach Gott, wie gut das aussieht, ey. Alter, sind die Miniaturen geil.
Also die Seppchen sind echt verrückt. Und die Rebellen, ich weiß gar nicht, welche ich nehmen
Die
soll.
Seite funktioniert nicht mehr. Wer hätte damit gedacht, dass jetzt alle Leute das
Aber Finn, guck dir doch mal dieses Foto von dem Riot Squad und der Sleeper Cell an. So gut wie die Figuren von dem Riot Squad aussehen, müssen die mega stark sein.
I love it. I love it.
Also ich habe das neue Regelbuch. Soll ich irgendwas zeigen? Soll ich meinen Bildschirm teilen?
Niemand möchte einen Bildschirm sehen.
Points Update.
Niemand möchte. Ja, Leute, das ist super. Internet ist zusammengestürzt. Die Webseite, die wird es jetzt für die nächsten 3 Jahre auflösen.
Ich habe es. Egal, ich habe es. Was wollt ihr wissen?
Gibt auch Punkte-Update, ne? Hast du nie gesagt?
Ja, komm, geh mal runter und sag mir mal bitte, ob da also noch Sachen sind, die sie nicht gezeigt haben. Ob es die irgendwelche Command-Karten oder so.
Also Speederbikes kosten jetzt 80 Punkte beim Imperium. Oh,
Endlich mal das Imperium einen Nerf gekriegt.
Ich hasse das. Die hassen das Imperium
Alle
einfach
hassen
immer.
das Imperium.
Ist doch so.
Ah, Maul kostet 130, das Sarge kostet 130, alles gleich schon dabei. Läuft.
Endlich mal ein Buff für die Separatisten, die haben es auch so schwer.
Ich finde es schön, dass da jetzt schon irgendwie 8 Leute abgestimmt haben und Separatisten 100% bekommen.
Also das Regelbuch ist wieder sehr gut.
Moment. Force Push kostet 40 Punkte.
Ja, ist doch fair.
40?
40?
Ich möchte ja auch nicht, dass jeder irgendwas pushen kann.
Okay, alles klar. Ich glaube, man wird wahrscheinlich nicht mehr so oft Force Push spielen.
Die haben das Attack-Timing halt geändert. Es gibt jetzt Backup, ist neu.
Will ich. Ja, dann, ich kann die Datei ja mal.
Ich habe sie. Ich kann es nur noch mal anbieten, ich kann es teilen.
Ja, ich kann sie mir auch gerade so holen. Hol ich sie mal. Warte, ich hol's mal kurz aus dem Internet. Warte mal kurz.
Gott, das ist ja echt
Ja,
ein
Backup ist schon witzig. Backup sagt, dass man mit Core-Einheiten seine Commander beschützen kann. Das ist okay.
Wartet kurz. Falsche.
Oh, sie wurden auch bei Discord als PDF hochgeladen, alle. Für alle, die auf dem Discord sind. Cantina Club. Die wurden in den News reingepostet gerade.
Ah, cool.
Ja. Da denkt mal jemand mit, das ist mal gut.
Ja, das hätte ich auch machen können, anstatt euch die ganze Zeit zu sagen, dass ich sie habe.
Anstatt zu sagen, dass das Imperium so schlecht ist, ne?
Das ist ja auch.
So, was soll ich hier denn
reinmachen? Print and Place hier unten. Updated Battle Cards.
Vor allem sind da ja auch die ganzen Missionen. Oh, ich weiß gar nicht, womit ich anfangen soll.
Nee, welchen wollen wir? Ich kann dir ja mal mein Dingens hier teilen. Das ist der.
Oh, das Points-Update haben sie auch sehr schön gemacht mit den Satellitenschüsseln. Sieht ein bisschen aus wie in Nevada.
Da ist hier das Regelbuch, was wir hier haben. Habe ich einmal. Ich kann auch noch. Wechselt er das dann?
Imperator Palpatine, 170 Punkte.
Cool.
Maul 130 Punkte. Ventress 130 Punkte. Sunfac 80 Punkte.
Ja, aber Palpatine für 170, also Force-Push war für den ja noch nie so wichtig, oder?
Ach cool, das Board, was sie gezeigt haben, gibt es auch direkt zum Ausdrucken. Das kannst du dann einmal schön machen, laminieren, dann läuft das.
Finn macht das so für als Preis auf richtig cool, so als Mauspad-Qualität.
Ja, ja.
Oh ja, das ist eine gute Idee. Das als Mauspad zu machen, das ist eine gute Idee.
Danke!
So.
Jemand, der es würdigt.
Gut, was wollen wir denn angucken? Ich habe es ja probiert, jetzt in den Stream reinzumachen.
Warte, ich kann den Stream einmal kurz.
Ich weiß ja nicht, worüber wir.
Ich sehe gerade bei dir so die Einheitenkarten.
Das ist ja schon mal etwas.
Warum ist die Art, die sie gezeigt haben, anders als die Art auf den Karten?
Hä, wo denn?
Wenn du dir die Einheitenkarten anguckst. Das Artwork vom AT-AT zum Beispiel ist ein anderes als das, was sie gezeigt haben.
Ja, ich weiß warum, aber ist okay. Es hat seine Gründe. Okay, das ist das. Cool.
Oder kostet nur noch 180 Punkte.
Ich weiß immer noch nicht, wo wollen wir denn noch was gucken? Wollen wir noch was gucken? Wir können auch alles beenden, so ist nicht. Ich bin jetzt hier noch bei.
Also die Vernunft sagt, mein Wecker klingelt in 5 Stunden.
Ist mir egal.
Wir machen bestimmt noch einige Podcast-Folgen hier drüber.
Ja.
Oh Gott, die Art.
Ja, ich glaube, ich bin auch für heute raus.
Boah,
Das ist
Kilian, guck dir mal The Phantom Menace an. Mit Sidious drauf.
Das ist okay. Die Spinnen sind auch günstiger geworden, wird ja gesagt. Finde ich gut. Endlich hat mal Assist einen Buff gekriegt.
Hör mal hier, Fabian, hör auf zu heulen dafür, da hat eine neue Zweierpfiff.
Die ist echt
Wer?
gut.
Wer?
Vader.
Das
Erstmal ist die Art krank und zweitens hat er jetzt quasi immer sein Deflect aktiv und dann kassierst du eine Wunde für jede Wunde, die Vader kriegt. Also freiwillig angreifen tust du den nicht mehr.
Das klingt richtig stark. Generell, also wir können versprechen, wir setzen uns recht Zeit dahin und ihr werdet auch bald Content dazu kriegen. Da sind wir uns schon.
Oh ja,
Das,
wir müssen viel reden.
da kann man auf jeden Fall zu was sagen.
Ja, ich würde sagen, wir machen ein paar Podcast-Folgen. Eine Podcast-Folge bitte leider nur wegen Grievous und dann bin ich schon glücklich.
Genau, wir haben jetzt die Änderung, dass man da immer Wunden kriegen kann, dann immer Wunden, wer eine Wunde kriegt, aber 4 in Deathmatch ist auf jeden Fall Wunden. Ja.
Ich bin glücklich, Leute. Bin sehr glücklich.
Hier Moff Gideon mit Standby-Tokens verteilen, finde ich natürlich cool.
Die Deadman sieht richtig geil aus, die Karte.
Ja,
Ne?
infiltrieren, also ich denke, das Imperium hat schon genug Buff gekriegt, ich weiß jetzt nicht.
Was denn? Er hat gar Quatsch.
Doch. Ich habe richtig Lust.
Ja, ich habe auch gerade richtig Bock. Also ich war ja momentan so ein bisschen gelangweilt, aber das ist jetzt besser als alles, was man sich erträumen
Ich war
konnte.
so ein bisschen gelangweilt.
Dieses Lied
Aber das
langweilt mich.
Ja, ich war momentan eher so auf Unlimited. Ich glaube, ich muss gleich Lili mal fragen, ob da einmal eine Karte kauft. Aber das ist schon gut. Ach, das ist schön.
Selim macht aber keine guten Preise, habe ich gehört.
Ja.
Oh, nice.
Ach Leute, das
Es
ist
ist halt schon krass, wie
Aber es hat jetzt ja nicht alles ein Update bekommen, ne? Nur so die Co-1.
Sie haben ja
das
gesagt,
haben sie ja eben gesagt.
Sie haben ja gesagt, bis quasi in einem Jahr sind alle Einheiten einmal neu gemacht worden. Das ist quasi das Ziel, was sie gerade jetzt damit arbeiten. Und dazu soll halt morgen nochmal, was da noch mit dazu kommt, alles kommen.
Ja gut, dann sind Klonkommandos auch fair.
Klonkommandos waren schon immer fair. Der Typ, der sie designt hat, war ein richtig cooler Typ.
So, ja.
Ja, das war der gedacht, man könnte einfach mal eine Balanced-Einheit machen.
Ja. Jetzt, wo du einen Grievous hast, der 230 Punkte alles tötet, ist in Ordnung. Aber die Art,
Ja, Immunpiers ist halt schon gut.
Aber der kleine Würfelpool der Kommandos ist doch jetzt noch besser.
Ja, aber das ist ja ganz anders.
Also Fabian, keine Milchschnitte, nur am Rumweinen hier wegen
Die
Imperium.
müssen sich ja viel mehr bewegen und das mögen die ja gar nicht.
Dafür hat man 800 andere Punkte in der Armee.
Ja, aber die müssen sich mehr bewegen. Und die sind voll fair. Und kleine
Nein,
Würfel.
nein, die müssen sich erstmal
vor
die
allem-
ersten 2 Runden nicht bewegen, weil die ja im
Nee.
Spiel starten, weil sie
Ja,
infiltrieren haben.
du musst doch mal so sind. Kleine Würfelpulse sind auf einmal, also was halt so ist, kleine Würfelpulse sind auf einmal super effektiv gegen die. Ne, weil das nicht so hart in Deckung hängen bleibt. Ne? Und,
Sondern nur im Schild, ja.
ein Schild. Das heißt, Scharfschütze auf einmal macht 2 Treffer, Decken, kann dann nur den 6er Decker machen in der Regel und sofort stirbt einer, weil er nur einen schilden kannst.
So, und wenn dann alles so toll ist, hat der Richard gesagt, kommt auch noch dazu.
Bin mir noch nicht sicher, was ich denke. Aber moin.
Das ist richtig
Moin.
gut.
Richard. Guten Tag.
Es ist richtig gut. Es macht richtig Spaß. Ich habe richtig Lust auf viel.
Ich habe viel Lust auf Grievous. Habe ich das schon gesagt? Und auf
Ja.
Doku natürlich.
Es gibt keine eine, auf die ich jetzt keine Lust hätte. Auch alle Imperiums-Support-Commander sind ja auf einmal richtig valide.
Warte mal, ich hab was. Auf den AA5 hat man keine Lust mehr.
Wieso?
Nein, vielleicht auch nicht, aber vielleicht auch schon, aber. Überlegen.
Ey, die Waffe kostet nur noch 20 Punkte, die große.
So, und Transport ist halt ein super Scout-Beruf, ist richtig gut.
Ah. Vielleicht nicht schlecht, aber es ist schon. Also zumindest alles, wofür der A5 sinnvoll benutzt wurde bis jetzt, geht halt nicht mehr.
Das ist richtig, ja. Nun ist halt richtig geiler Transporter für die beste Core-Einheit, die es gibt. Das sind die Fleet Troopers. Und Flottentruppen sind richtig gut.
Aber die großen kannst du ja nicht reintun, richtig?
Das stimmt, aber du kannst die halt mit einen 6er-Trupp reintun. Schon okay.
Philipp, Druidikas kosten nur noch 60 Punkte.
Ja, und
Spinnen nur noch
Droikas
50.
sind gut. Ja,
60 Punkte ist ja nix.
Ja,
vor allen Dingen
Ja,
hast du.
musst ja halt gucken halt, ne? Wenn du hier guckst, hier ins Regeln hier mit Deckung und so und Fahrzeugen und so, ist halt alles ein bisschen schwierig.
Vor allen Dingen,
Ja,
Kilian, hast du.
okay,
hast
Aber
du-
was haben sie mit Fahrzeugdeckung gemacht? Jetzt bin ich.
Guck doch ins Regelbuch
Kilian,
rein.
Kilian, hast
Oh,
du
nee,
gesehen,
okay.
dass der Ionenblaster von der Spinne, dass der keinen Tappen mehr hat?
Ja, genau, das ist voll gut. Hat auch kritisch gekriegt jetzt und Wucht hat 1 oder 2.
Nee, habe ich nicht gesehen.
Ja,
Die Spinne kannst du einfach 3 Spinnen dahin stellen, stellst dann einen Kalani hinter, versorgst die mit Tokens und die schießen die auf Reichweite 4 alles zu Klump.
Außer mein E-Web, das schießt euch auf Reichweite 4
Ja.
zu Klump.
Ich habe gedacht, das ist alles so schlecht, Fabian. Jetzt sag mal nicht, dass das E-Web so gut
Siehst
ist.
du, jetzt wollte ich was Positives sagen, es ist auch falsch.
Das wird generell auch diese ganzen Flammenwerfer, die auch im Nahkampf gehen und so. Das finde ich alles ganz witzig.
Ach ja, krass, ich muss das nicht mehr tippen.
Ja, die
Ich finde das mit dem Nahkampf ist cooler. Also ich finde die Veränderung cool, dass du halt tatsächlich Nahkampflösungen als Deck nutzen kannst mit solchen Einheiten.
Oh, Kilian, die Mine von den
Weiß
Kommando
nicht,
drin,
ich
die
glaube
geht
nicht,
auch
dass
im
es-
Nahkampf.
Was?
Das wird Fleets trotzdem nicht gut machen, glaube ich, oder zumindest nicht.
Ich verspreche dir, dass Fleets einer der meistgespielten Core-Einheiten sein werden. Ist so. Die sind so gut. Das ist so krass.
Ich hasse sie.
Ja.
Ich hasse sie dermaßen.
Also du hast immer
Und
eine
für-
Einheit mit denen. Die sind so gut.
Ich habe ja auch, ich habe gleich ein paar Buffs bekommen. Ich habe Leia vorher schon gespielt und Fleets vorher schon.
Ja. Die sind so gut.
Und die sind beide.
Große
Also,
Fleets-Einheiten
Kilian,
sind einfach der Weg. Eine große
Kilian,
Fleet mit. Ist so gut.
Kilian, wir haben jetzt BX Kommando drin, die Poison haben und mit ihren Schwertern mit der Mine in den Nahkampf rennen können.
Ja, das ist ganz
Ja,
witzig.
ist geil.
Mit Jump 1.
Geil. Läuft.
Ach, Kinder, was ist das denn für eine Zeit hier?
Das ist witzig.
Ja, ich würde mal sagen, die Turnierszene ist für dieses Jahr deutlich interessanter geworden.
Ist
Fairerweise, das Bar war low.
Ja, das Bar war low, aber jetzt haben sie das Bar
Ja,
genommen,
nein, also
in
es wird
1000 Stücke gegangen und haben
super
natürlich so einen
interessant. Und selbst wenn sowas wird, das wird sehr interessant.
Heilige Mutter Maria.
Ich finde das im Regelbuch halt erst auf der, was ist das, die zweite Seite, halt direkt gegangen
Ach,
sind.
das sind sogar 8 B2s dann. Wie viele? Das sind doch.
Ja klar, du addest 4 dazu und plus die Schwerwaffe,
Warte.
oder?
Das sind 14 schwarze Würfel plus nochmal 3 rote auf. Das sind 17 Würfel auf Range 2.
Ja, die
Okay,
kriegen auch bei Jedi.
Dafür kostet
Und
die Einheit 180
Blas.
Punkte oder so.
Dafür haben die doppelt so viele Lebenspunkte fast wie ein AT.
Ja, du kriegst dann halt auch, ja auch deinen T-Series rein, ne? Das heißt, du kriegst keine Search-Token ganz so einfach.
Genau, schön aggressive Taktiken, schöner Searches drauf, du willst ein bisschen Leben haben.
Also ich finde es ganz okay, dass ich Dark Trooper als Core Trooper bekommen habe. Ja. Just saying.
Kilian, dein Gedankengang gefällt mir. Das sind wir hier. Wir sprechen dieselbe Sprache.
Gesagt und dann so, Fabian, jetzt hau immer nicht so viel rum.
Jetzt Fabian, jetzt hör doch mal nicht so viel rum.
Ja, ich kann ja einfach. Ich habe gehört, die Slokana soll ganz gut sein.
Außerdem, was man nicht vergessen kann, also Ionenwaffen sind halt echt omnipräsent.
Ja,
ich.
das stimmt. Ionenwaffen.
Und du wirst halt echt viele Aktionen-Druiden klauen können, ne?
Aber jetzt muss man für Ionentruppen doch immer würfeln.
Ja, aber es heißt ja schon, eine Aktion klauen ist ja schon echt gut. Ist ja schon
So ist
sehr
dann die
Und du musst die halt nicht mehr recovern meistens, was ja eine der Sachen ist, die so viele von denen so unglaublich scheiße gemacht hat.
Ja, und du kannst ja auch nicht komplette Aktivierung mehr klauen.
Ja.
Gott, ey, also Leute, das ist doch der totale Wahnsinn jetzt gerade hier. Also das ist doch hier.
Warte mal, kann Ionen nicht mehr beide entfernen?
Nee,
Nein.
fährt nur noch eine Aktion.
Maximal niedergehalten.
Genau.
Ach so, weil ja andere Leute mit Suppression auch nur eine Aktion verlieren können.
Ja.
Jein, aber du kannst ja immer noch paniken. Aber es ist halt einfach.
Das meine ich. Nein, alles gut.
Kannst halt quasi.
Ja.
Aber deswegen sind die Ionenwaffen halt so omnipräsenter geworden. Die nicht mehr getappt, haben alle kritisch gekriegt. Machen also mehr Schaden.
Ich sehe, das nächste Update, was kommen werden muss, ist der Imperiumsbuff.
Mhm.
Hier, klippt das und spielt es in einem halben Jahr bitte nochmal vor.
Klippt das.
Also Wirs haben sie ja auch echt was gegeben.
Ja, Wirs ist schon cool.
Das ist geil, Alter.
Wirs ist okay.
Wenn du jetzt noch eine Inquisitor mit Force Push reinkriegst und jede Runde Guidance.
Das geht ja nicht.
Das wäre gar ein Fahrzeug.
Nee, Standby triggert ja nicht mehr. Steht ja bei Standby drin.
Ah, okay. Nee, dann okay. Aber, genau, aber Standby kann man zumindest normal ja schon geben damit.
Genau, aber
Mit Guidance kannst du Standby geben, ja.
Genau.
Kein Standby.
Und so einem ATST ein Standby geben ist jetzt, wenn der Gegner auf dich zukommt, schon keine schlechte Sache, die eine 75 Punkte Einheit machen kann.
Ist okay, ja. Das ist okay.
Ich sehe ja mehr den Panzer. Ich bin ein totaler Fan des Panzers. Transporter sind so gut. Ich glaube, das wird witzig. Super Scout-Move, hinfahren, Dinge tun.
Ich wollte gerade sagen, B2 sind beim Ender 99.
Ja, finde ich interessant.
Irgendwie habe ich jetzt das Gefühl, dass Transport Change ich hätte doch mal die Oblog-Liste verspielen sollen. Nur um zu wissen, was zur Hölle macht für Unsinn.
Ja, aber Commander Luke ist jetzt auch auf jeden Fall spielbar. Der ist schon ganz witzig. Recht straightforward.
Also, dass sie ihm Block gegeben haben, ist nett.
Na, ich hätte lieber Deflect, ne? Aber.
Er hat noch nicht genug trainiert.
Ja, wenn Deflect halt immer an ist,
Aber-
ist Deflect schon besser irgendwie als Block.
Aber ich habe jetzt.
Ja.
Aber Deflect ist doch, habe ich das falsch gesagt, ist Deflect immer noch nur Ranged?
Deflect ist nur ranged, ja, aber du brauchst kein
Ja.
Dodge-Token mehr, es ist immer da.
Ja,
Und Block braucht einen Dodge-Token.
ja. Aber eine 6 Health Red Safe Unit, die keinen Trainingsslot hat, in Nahkampf tun,
Aber er hat doch einen Trainingsslot.
ohne dass du den Switch Block holen kannst, war auch schon teilweise ein Problem.
Aber er hätte jetzt ja einen Trainingsslot gehabt. Oder hat jetzt ja einen.
Was?
Er hat doch jetzt einen Trainingsslot.
Ja. Na, okay, fair. Das hätte ich noch nicht gesehen.
So, deswegen Deflect wäre schon per se immer besser.
Ja. Ja, nee, okay, dann. Na, kannst du ihm zumindest Tenacity, kannst du auch Tenacity geben, wenn du möchtest.
Mhm. Okay, auf den Azuka-Karten steht jetzt nur noch Rebel Only.
Ja. Da könnte morgen mal gucken, warum die das gemacht haben. Das ist ja
Ach,
nichts
so
anderes an den Karten.
Nein. Aber wenn
Zeig
ich mir
mir
den
den
Anakin
ersten
angucke,
wieder.
das ist ja komplett gestörte Scheiße.
Na ja, gut, wir sind.
Anakin sagt einfach, Eat, ich gehe in deine Armee rein. Und du
Aber wir
hast
machen
nicht
da-
mehr Force-Pusher.
Aber wir können,
Wenn,
ja
wenn du einen Machtnutz hast, unbedingt.
aber wir können den Streamer jetzt beenden.
Ja,
Da müssen wir 1000 Gäste machen.
ich beende
Ja,
mal
ja.
den Stream, genau.
Ja.
Danke fürs Zuschauen.
Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen.
Es gibt bald
Ciao.
Podcast-Folgen.
Ciao, ciao.
Versprochen.
Ja.
Tschüss. Stream beenden. Na, siehste.